Chapter 1754. 6 to 7,000 experts on the saint rankings. Even if they did not attack, their aura alone could kill most of the people from the 6 great saint lands. Even if Feng Yongji and the others used their supreme weapons to resist for a while, it was only for a while. They could not resist Murong Yu's power at all. Even if they blocked Murong Yu, they could not leave the valley and the Archean world. Feng Yongji looked at Bai Luo and the others with an ugly expression and said in a deep voice, "What do you think?" Bai Luo and the others felt bitter in their hearts, and their expressions were extremely bitter. However, they were all silent. They were also in a dilemma. Fight them. Yuan Wei's eyes flashed with a cold, murderous intent as he shouted angrily. Fight! The other 5 looked at him as if they were looking at an idiot. Did he think he could fight Murong Yu and the others? As the saying goes, capture the leader first to capture the bandits. As long as we capture Murong Yu, do you think others will dare to continue attacking us? Yuan Wei sneered as he held the supreme weapon in his hands tightly, and an endless murderous intent burst out. Feng Yongji and the others looked at each other and nodded. Shengzhen was powerful, and they were no match for him. However, if it was just Murong Yu alone, they still had some confidence. Murong Yu, I've thought about it. Since we have no other choice, we can only choose to surrender. Yuan Wei stepped forward and appeared in front of Murong Yu. He looked at Murong Yu and said in a deep voice. At the same time, Feng Yongji and the other 4 walked up to Murong Yu without leaving a trace, wrapping themselves around him. Murong Yu's eyes flashed with a brilliant light, and then a smile appeared on his face. At this moment, Yuan Wei suddenly shouted in his heart, "Attack!" Boom, boom, boom. At the same time, Feng Yongji and the others all attacked. Each of them raised their power to the limit and poured it into the supreme weapons in their hands. In an instant, the 5-colored holy light burst out and soared into the sky, enveloping the entire huge valley. At the same time, an extremely violent aura burst out from the 6 supreme weapons. It carried a terrifying aura that could destroy the heavens and the earth as it slashed towards Murong Yu. At this moment, Murong Yu's face flashed with shock. Puff! Just as Murong Yu revealed a look of shock, the supreme weapons of Feng Yongji and the others had already landed on his body. After a muffled sound, Murong Yu's entire body was smashed into pieces. He died just like that. Feng Yongji and the others found it strange. Although they had launched a sneak attack, with Murong Yu's strength, he should have been able to resist for a while. There was absolutely no reason for him to die so quickly. But now, it seemed that Murong Yu was really dead. However, Bai Luo and the others still felt that something was off. But for a moment, he didn't know what was wrong. Fresh blood, yes, fresh blood. Even if he was smashed into pieces, there would still be fresh blood. However, Murong Yu's body exploded like a shadow. There wasn't any flesh or blood left. Yuan Wei suddenly cried out in alarm. Feng Yongji and the others finally reacted. So this was what was wrong. It was also at this moment that a burst of laughter rang out. You guys aren't that stupid. Do you think you can kill me with your little strength? Do you know what it means to be a lunatic? I'm talking about you guys. Murong Yu's voice rang out. Then, Murong Yu's figure slowly appeared not far away from them. These 6 people were all masters of the Holy Land. They were ruthless and cunning. How could Murong Yu not be on guard? When he entered the valley, he had already used the Holy World's source energy to envelop this place, forming a domain. Although the immemorial world was an independent space, it was still within the Holy World. Therefore, the Holy World's source energy was still useful. How is this possible? Feng Yongji and the others' faces were ashen. They were extremely shocked. Nothing is impossible. Murong Yu sneered as an incomparably large amount of energy pressed down on him. At the same time, he slapped down with his palm. Plop! Feng Yongji and the others barely resisted Murong Yu's power suppression. But they couldn't stop Murong Yu's attack. With a slap, all 6 of them were suppressed. In the end, they fell to the ground and stopped moving. There was still a considerable gap between their strength and Murong Yu's. Not to mention that they were in Murong Yu's domain. Originally, if you guys took the initiative to submit, You wouldn't have to suffer like this. But Morong Yu shook his head. His enormous soul had already shot out. It split into 6 parts and enveloped Feng Yongji and the others. Then, it quickly rushed into their soul space. Feng Yongji and the others were instantly depressed. If they knew that the end result would be like this, they wouldn't have made a move. But now they had to suffer this endless pain. Perhaps because he wanted them to suffer a little, Morong Yu didn't quickly control their souls. Instead, he controlled them slowly. During this process, Feng Yongji and the others felt as if their souls were being torn apart one by one. Incomparable pain spread throughout their bodies. In the beginning, they could still grit their teeth and endure it. But later on, Morong Yu used some method to increase their pain by 1,000 times. In the end, Bai Luo, the female powerhouse, couldn't help but let out an incomparably shrill scream. Then, Yuan Wei, Feng Yongji, and the other 4 men also screamed. For a moment, only Feng Yongji and the other screams could be heard in the entire huge valley. It was like a pig being slaughtered. It was unpleasant and horrifying. Hearing these incomparably shrill screams, all the disciples of the 6 holy lands were so scared that their faces turned green. Some people with weaker willpower were so scared that they directly fainted. After half a day, the incomparably shrill screams of the 6 gradually stopped. At this time, Feng Yongji and the other souls had already been controlled by Morong Yu. They had become Morong Yu's slaves. However, the 6 of them were covered in sweat as they collapsed on the ground. They didn't stand up. This was because Morong Yu had tortured them for half a day. In this half a day, the pain they had endured was billions of times more than what they had suffered since they were born. However, with their strength, standing up wasn't a problem for them. The main reason why they didn't stand up wasn't because of this, but because they had become Morong Yu's slaves. They were the leaders of the 6 holy lands. They were existences that were second only to one person and above tens of thousands. Usually, they were the ones who controlled others. When was it someone else's turn to control their souls? Slaves. They had become Morong Yu's slaves. This made them feel incomparably ashamed. Thus, they decided not to pretend to be dead. How are the 6 of you? Unparalleled Palace Master Lin Giyun and Purple Thunder Hall Master Su Tianyu walked over. Su Tianyu looked at Feng Yongji and the others who were lying on the ground and pretending to be dead. Lin Giyun and Su Tianyu were extremely furious towards the 6 of them. This was because their actions of sealing the mountain gate made them feel extremely ashamed. If not for the fact that they were still useful, even if Morong Yu didn't kill them, the 2 of them would have killed the 6 of them. Thus, when they saw Morong Yu torturing them, Su Tianyu and Lin Giyun felt rather relieved. After Feng Yongji knew that they had become Morong Yu's souls, the 2 of them came over to mock them. Feng Yongji and the others felt even more ashamed. They knew that Lin Giyun and Su Tianyu didn't become Morong Yu's slaves. Furthermore, the 2 holy lands were still independent after joining the Human Race Alliance. Their orthodoxy was still there. Morong Yu didn't care about them at all. If they had made the same choice as Unparalleled Palace back then, they might not have ended up in such a state. Feng Yongji and the others sighed in their hearts. In the end, they still stood up. However, their expressions were still ugly. Keep. Morong Yu summoned the Hichu Luoshu and kept all the disciples of the 6 great holy lands in it. Although these people were frightened now, not many of them were willing to submit to Morong Yu sincerely. Therefore, Morong Yu kept them first and would slowly train them when he had the time. My lord, that ferocious beast king is too powerful. Even if the 6 of us summon our supreme weapons, we are still no match for him. I'm afraid he has the strength of a half-step supreme. In the valley, Feng Yongji looked at the ferocious beast king that was roaring outside and said with an ugly expression, "It was a primordial ferocious elephant the size of a mountain. Its long trunk reached straight to the sky. Its 2 sharp tusks that emitted a cold light looked as if they were going to pierce the sky. The primordial ferocious elephant stood on the spot. Waves of ferocious aura emanated from its body, causing the surrounding void to shatter continuously. There was no other ferocious beast beside it. The other ferocious beasts couldn't withstand the terrifying aura of the ferocious elephant at all. "I'll go and meet him," Whitey roared and took a step forward. It turned into a stream of light and rushed out of the valley to meet the primordial ferocious elephant head-on. Whitey was the cloud-soaring, space-splitting Cheelin, the king of all beasts and his sacred beast. It was the most terrifying sacred beast in the primordial era. It was extremely powerful, especially in the aspect of space. No one could surpass it. Therefore, Morongu didn't stop it from joining the battle. Roar! After leaving the valley, Whitey's body swayed and expanded with the wind. In an instant, it transformed into its original form, a Cheelin the size of a mountain. Its aura that was no weaker than the primordial ferocious beasts erupted from its body. One was the descendant of the most powerful sacred beast in the primordial era. The other was the descendant of one of the most ferocious beasts in the primordial era. Who was stronger and who was weaker between the two? The sacred beasts and ferocious beasts soared into the sky and stared at each other in the void. Their auras continued to rise, and it seemed like they were about to erupt at any moment. "Little elephant, submit to me, otherwise I'll kill you." Just when everyone thought that the two of them were about to fight, Whitey suddenly said, "You unrecognizable thing, hurry up and submit to me. Otherwise, I'll beat you up until you submit and eat you alive, and those despicable humans behind you." The primordial ferocious elephant also spoke in human language with an extremely arrogant tone. Feng Yongji and the others were all stunned and looked at each other. This primordial ferocious elephant can speak. Chapter 1755. A sacred beast's dignity was not to be challenged, let alone a primordial ferocious beast. Since ancient times, sacred beasts and ferocious beasts had been sworn enemies. Especially a king among sacred beasts like the Cheelin, it hated ferocious beasts like the primordial ferocious elephant. Therefore, Whitey roared angrily, unfolded its body, and charged straight at the primordial ferocious elephant. Seeing Whitey charging over, the primordial ferocious elephant's eyes that were the size of millstones widened, and a ball of dazzling ferocious light burst out. Then his long nose, which was pointing straight to the sky, let out an earth-shattering snort. Then it swung it fiercely, smashing hundreds of millions of space-time, and fiercely slapped at Whitey, who was charging over. Swoosh! In a flash, the primordial ferocious elephant's nose had already appeared in front of Whitey, and it carried a terrifying aura that could destroy heaven and earth as it smashed down fiercely. Whitey was shocked when it felt the destructive aura from the elephant's nose. Without any hesitation, Whitey retreated violently. However, it was too late. With a bang, the primordial ferocious elephant's nose directly hit Whitey's body. It slapped Whitey's body until it disappeared on the spot. It seemed to have been slapped into powder. However, the primordial elephant didn't think so. Although it had struck Little White, it didn't think so. Although it had slapped Whitey, it felt that most of its power had been removed, and the remaining power was not enough to kill Whitey. Sure enough, just as everyone was feeling bewildered, the space-time hundreds of millions of miles away from the battlefield suddenly shattered. Then, Whitey's figure suddenly dashed out of the space-time. Although it was in a sorry state, it was not seriously injured. However, Whitey was extremely angry. It roared angrily, took a step forward, and disappeared on the spot. Traveling through the space-time, the primordial ferocious elephant's face suddenly became solemn, and its enormous divine thought spread out in all directions like a tide with itself as the center. However, it did not discover anything, not to mention the primordial ferocious elephant. Even Morongu, who had mastered the space law, might not be able to discover Whitey, who had escaped into the space-time. After all, Whitey was best at the space law. Swoosh! The moment Whitey disappeared, a huge claw that contained a terrifying power that could destroy heaven and earth appeared above the primordial ferocious elephant. The primordial beast reacted instantly. That huge elephant trunk immediately went forward. With a loud bang, the sky was shattered into pieces. The primordial ominous elephant let out a muffled groan, and its huge trunk was sent flying. However, Whitey, who had attacked, was also sent flying hundreds of millions of miles away. It was obvious who was superior. Whitey was no match for the primordial ominous elephant. Even so, Little White's performance shocked Feng Yongji and the others. After all 6 of them were no match for the primeval ominous elephant even after utilizing their supreme weapons, and it was even to the extent that they couldn't even withstand a single strike from it. But under Murong Yu's command, just a single holy beast had the strength to fight against a primordial ominous elephant. It was laughable that they had tried in vain to kill Murong Yu. Murong Yu's side was much stronger than them. In reality, Feng Yongji and the others were wrong. In terms of true strength, the gap between Whitey and the primordial ferocious beast was huge. Whitey's holy beast pressure had no effect on the primordial ominous elephant. The reason why it was able to fight against the primordial ominous elephant was because of its spatial law. When it was attacked, it used the spatial law to dissipate most of the power. And the reason why it could attack the primordial ominous elephant was because it relied on the spatial law's extreme speed. Once the primordial ominous elephant figured out Whitey's tricks, Whitey would no longer be its match. Sure enough, Whitey could no longer attack the primordial ominous elephant after a short while. On the other hand, the primordial ominous elephant repeatedly attacked Whitey. In a short period of time, Whitey was heavily injured. In the end, Murong Yu felt that there was no need to continue wasting time, so he reached out and grabbed Whitey. Then, he took a step forward and confronted the primordial ominous elephant. "I'll give you a chance. Submit to me and be prepared to die." Murong Yu looked at the primordial ominous elephant with a cold expression, and his voice was incomparably cold. "Die." However, what welcomed him was the primordial ominous elephant's huge trunk. "You overestimate yourself." Murong Yu snorted coldly and punched out with his right fist. Boom! After the earth-shattering explosion, it was followed by a shrill scream. At that moment, the pupils of Feng Yongji and the murderers in the surroundings shrank abruptly. This was because they saw that the primordial ominous elephant's huge trunk had been destroyed by Murong Yu's punch. It exploded into a cloud of blood mist and scattered in the sky. On the other hand, Murong Yu's fist was not even stained with blood. His figure didn't even sway a bit. The difference between the two was obvious. Impossible. The primordial ominous elephant was terrified. It shook its head, and the destroyed trunk was restored again. This time, its 2 incomparably sharp tusks erupted with 2 dazzling balls of holy light and turned into 2 sharp swords. They cut through space and time and slashed madly at Murong Yu. A glint flashed across Murong Yu's eyes. He used his right hand's fingers like a sword and slashed out as well. Rumble. The 3 sharp swords collided violently in the void and exploded in an instant, turning into primordial energy that dissipated in the void. It seemed that they were evenly matched. However, it was time to take the initiative to attack. In a flash, he appeared above the primordial ominous elephant's head. He then took a step forward and stomped on the primordial ominous elephant's huge head. The primordial ominous elephant was enraged. It roared, and its incomparably sharp tusks cut through the void and slashed fiercely at Murong Yu. However, at that moment, the primordial ominous elephant saw a strange smile on Murong Yu's face. The primordial ominous elephant felt a chill in its heart. At the same time, it felt a sharp pain in its soul. At this moment, in his soul space, strands of soul force were wildly attacking his soul like a storm. Soul attack. The primordial ominous elephant's face changed abruptly. At that moment, Murong Yu performed the Great Sage Technique again. Heavenly King Grand Sage Technique. The primordial ominous elephant did not even have time to react before its mind lost control. In a battle between powerhouses, even a 10,000th of an instant of mental lapse was destined to be defeated. Swoosh! The Xianyuan sword appeared in Murong Yu's hand. Since it was pointed downwards, it quickly slashed down. With a poof, the primordial ominous elephant was cut into two halves. Even its soul was cut into two halves. The primordial ominous elephant, the ferocious king of ferocious beasts, was slain just like that. Even though they saw it with their own eyes, the people and ferocious beasts around could not believe it. After all, the king of ferocious beasts' strength was too terrifying. Yet, Muronyu killed it so easily. It was too unbelievable. Lowly human, I'm going to kill you. After a while, the primordial ominous elephant's body that was cut into two halves recovered. It was not completely killed by Muronyu. After it recovered, it roared and charged at Muronyu again. If I can kill you once, I can kill you twice, thrice, and countless times. Remember, I'm not being merciful. I just think that you're a promising person. Submit to me. I'll let you achieve greater things than before. Muronyu quickly retreated and said to the primordial ominous elephant coldly, Lowly human, I'll never submit to you even if I die. Dream on. The primordial ominous elephant was enraged. It unleashed an aura that was even more powerful than before and charged at Muronyu violently. At the same time, a five-colored holy light shot out from its body and hovered in front of it. It was a supreme artifact giant axe. The primordial ominous elephant grabbed the giant axe with its huge claw. Its aura skyrocketed and its strength rose rapidly. If its strength was only equivalent to the second on the Saint leaderboard before, then it had reached the level of the first on the Saint leaderboard now. It could be said that it was half a step away from becoming a supreme being. Muronyu's strength was comparable to the seventh on the Saint leaderboard. If his time, space, and soul abilities were included, his strength was so strong that even the third on the Saint leaderboard, Dongmen Li Xuan, was no match for him. If Muronyu ignited his soul power to summon the Xian Yuan sword, he could even fight the second on the Saint leaderboard. As for the first on the Saint leaderboard, Muronyu had never seen it before, so he didn't know. At this moment, he was excited to see the primordial ominous elephant's strength rising rapidly. It had the strength of the first on the Saint leaderboard. Come on! Muronyu roared excitedly and charged forward with the Xian Yuan sword in his hand. He and the primordial ominous elephant engaged in a fierce battle. Their strength was unstoppable. Sword rays flashed and the void exploded. Both of them were top-notch existences in the holy world. Their speed and strength were rarely seen in the world. For a moment, the battle between the two of them attracted the attention of everyone below. Everyone's eyes lit up as they nodded. That was because they had more or less comprehended something from the battle between Muronyu and Xian Yuan. Some things that they couldn't comprehend in the past suddenly became clear as they watched the battle between Muronyu and Xian Yuan. After half a day, Feng Yongji looked at everyone with a frown and said hesitantly, Master doesn't seem to be a match for that ominous elephant. Everyone nodded slightly. Muronyu and Xian Yuan were still engaged in an intense battle. However, it was obvious that Muronyu was at a disadvantage. If this continued, Muronyu would definitely lose. Once Muronyu lost, they could only flee the primordial world with their tails between their legs. If they couldn't even subdue the primordial ominous elephant, they wouldn't be able to become the ruler of the primordial world. However, people like Murong Xian, Li Ling, and the others didn't think so. This was because Murong was only using ordinary attacks now. He hadn't used any of his ultimate moves like soul attacks, mental attacks, or time attacks. These winning battle skills weren't suitable, so it was normal for Murong to be at a disadvantage. Once Murong launched a counterattack, the primordial ominous elephant could only be killed. Chapter 1756. Boom! Amidst the great battle, an ancient character flew out from Murongyu's hands and then shattered billions of space-time, directly smashing onto the primordial ominous elephant's body. Regarding this, the primordial ominous elephant just smiled disdainfully. Not to mention that it was just a single ancient character condensed by Murongyu. Its physical body was so powerful that it could even resist Murongyu's attack head-on. However, when it made the primordial ominous elephant speechless, The power of the ancient character was not very strong and did not pose any threat to it at all. However, after the ancient character bombarded its body, it suddenly exploded into pieces. In the next instant, the primordial ominous elephant discovered that the space around had changed. Space seemed to have been imprisoned. Sabers condensed from the power of space, slashed over with incomparable ferocity. Apart from that, the collapsed space even formed a spatial storm, strangling the primordial ominous elephant with incomparable ferocity. Xi formula. Muronyu used the Xi formula. This was the first time he used it against an enemy after the true 9 syllables formula mutated. With the increase in strength, the power of the true 9 syllables formula made Muronyu quite satisfied. The primordial ominous elephant's face changed abruptly. With a loud roar, it erupted with a powerful force and charged in all directions. Rumble, the spatial attack that came from the explosion of the Xi formula, was finally shattered by the primordial ominous elephant. Although it did not kill the primordial ominous elephant, it also frightened the primordial ominous elephant until it broke out in cold sweat. At this moment, another ancient character flew over. The primordial ominous elephant's heart jumped, and it erupted with a powerful attack and charged over. However, what made it depressed was that one ancient character after another continuously appeared out of thin air, carrying a terrifying aura that could destroy heaven and earth as it charged over. Moreover, the power that erupted from each ancient character was different. Space, soul, and so on attacks made the primordial ominous elephant complain incessantly for a time. And it was precisely because of the appearance of these ancient characters that Muronyu overpowered the situation, flipping from a disadvantage to an advantage, and suppressed the incomparably ferocious primordial ominous elephant. Apart from these ancient characters, the aura on Muronyu's body became more and more powerful. Now, even if he didn't use those ancient characters, he would probably be able to fight the primordial ominous elephant to a draw. In the midst of the battle, Muronyu felt that he was about to break through again. If he could advance from the 4th Order Chaos Ancestor Realm to the 5th Order Chaos Ancestor Realm, his strength would skyrocket once again. His ranking on the Saint rankings would increase by at least 10,000 places. He had risen from 70,000th to 60,000th on the Saint rankings. He had already reached the peak of the 4th stage Primal Chaos Ancestor Saint Realm. However, Muronyu also knew that if he did not refine an enormous amount of energy, it would be impossible for him to break through. In the end, he would forever be stuck at the peak of the 4th Order Primal Chaos Ancestor Sage Realm, unable to advance any further. Primordial ominous elephant, if you don't submit now, when will you? Looking at the primordial ominous elephant that was constantly roaring under his suppression, Muronyu withdrew his mind and shouted loudly. In your dreams, the primordial ominous elephant held a giant axe in its hand and charged left and right with a murderous aura. It smashed through hundreds of millions of voids in an attempt to rush to Muronyu's side and kill him. Unfortunately, Muronyu continuously shot out ancient characters to trap the elephant in the sky and kill it, but it could not get close. In that case, I will subdue you by force. A cold light flashed in Muronyu's eyes. The reason he had chosen to fight the primordial ominous elephant previously was that he wanted to experience the elephant's strength. At the same time, he wanted to familiarize himself with his new strength. Now, after a great battle, Muronyu had not only consolidated his cultivation and strength, but he had also improved. It would not be of any help to him if the battle continued. Therefore, he wanted to end the battle. As he spoke, Muronyu flicked his right finger slightly, and an ancient character shot out with a whistling sound, charging toward the primordial ominous elephant. Another ancient character. The primordial ominous elephant roared furiously as the giant axe in its hand swung down, and it forcefully slashed the ancient character that shot over. The terrifying force slashed the ancient character into pieces. Bang! The ancient character's offensive strength could be considered to be formidable, but the most important thing was the combat skill that the ancient character carried. Swoosh! After the ancient character exploded, an indescribable force acted on the primordial ominous elephant. Thus, the primordial ominous elephant noticed that the scene before its eyes had changed, and then it vanished on the spot and appeared in an unfamiliar space. Where is this place? The primordial ominous elephant was speechless, and it looked around with surprise and bewilderment. With one look, he was greatly shocked. It was still in the primordial world, but it seemed to be in the primordial world that was almost an era ago. The reason it was certain that it was almost an era ago was because it saw a rather familiar scene. Not far in front of it, a primordial ominous elephant that looked exactly like it was standing on the spot, and it was looking ahead while letting out low and excited roars. In front of that primordial ominous elephant was a smaller primordial ominous elephant. There were only 2 primordial ominous elephants in the entire primordial world, and one was naturally the ominous beast king of the primordial world. The other was the descendant of the Lake Tai ominous elephant. At that moment, the primordial ominous elephant was looking at the scene after the primordial ominous elephant was born. It was because of this that it was extremely excited. The primordial ominous elephant still remembered this scene vividly. I've been teleported back to an era ago. The primordial ominous elephant was shocked. It dared not believe it, but the scene in front of it really happened, and it was certain that it was not an illusion. Thus, the primordial ominous elephant stepped out and entered the herd of ominous beasts, arriving beside it from an era ago. However, those ominous beasts did not notice anything. Only the it from an epoch ago was looking at his current position with a suspicious look on its face. The primordial ominous elephant's heart sank, and it suddenly recalled that it seemed to have felt that someone was secretly spying on it. Could it be because of this? The primordial ominous elephant's face was extremely gloomy. Although it had returned to an era ago, it seemed to be in a different time and space from before, and the two of them did not intersect at all. Swoosh! Just as the primordial ominous elephant was gloomy, the force that sent it to the past enveloped it again. Before the primordial ominous elephant could react, the scene before its eyes changed again. When it saw it clearly again, it saw an extremely huge sword descending from the sky and slashing its body fiercely. With a PU, the primordial ominous elephant's body and soul were directly slashed into 2. At that moment, a huge hand shattered the sky and suddenly grabbed down from the 9 heavens, directly grabbing one side of its body and soul. In the next moment, the primordial ominous elephant sensed that the other half of its body and soul were sealed. The person who did this was Murongyu. He first used the alignment formula to reverse time and space, sending the primordial ominous elephant back to an era ago. Then, he used the law of time again to pull the primordial ominous elephant back from the past. Before the primordial ominous elephant could react, he slashed it into 2 with a sword. The law of time is really useful. Murongyu was extremely satisfied. If used well, a powerhouse at the level of the primordial ominous elephant would be killed without any ability to resist at all. Primordial ominous elephant, you're still not willing to submit? After controlling half of the primordial ominous elephant's soul, Murongyu shouted coldly again. The primordial ominous elephant did not answer. It just stared blankly at Murongyu. After a long time, it asked blankly, "You can send me to the past? Can you send me to the past and make me appear in the same time and space as well?" Why did it ask that? Murongyu's heart skipped a beat, then he nodded slightly. "I can submit to you, but you have to agree to a request of mine. Otherwise, I won't submit to you even if I die." The primordial ominous elephant stared blankly at Murongyu, and its tone was extremely determined. Just one request, and it would submit to him? Looking at the primordial ominous elephant in the distance, Feng Yongji and the others could not help but be dumbfounded. However, they all knew that the primordial ominous elephant's request was definitely not simple. Murongyu did not agree immediately. He only said indifferently, "What request? Send me back to the past, and in the same time and space. I'll submit to you and never betray you. You'll become my master the master of the primordial world, the king. The primordial ominous elephant's eyes flickered as it looked at Murong Yu expectantly. Murong Yu frowned slightly and told the truth. I can only send you back within an era now. I can't do it for the time beyond an era now. The primordial ominous elephant was overjoyed. One era is enough. As it spoke, its gigantic body suddenly shrank rapidly. In a short while, it transformed into the appearance of a burly young man. With a plop, the young man knelt in front of Murong Yu and said solemnly, I, Xiang Yang, swear again that from today onwards I'll... At this point, Xiang Yang looked at Murong Yu because he did not know Murong Yu's name. Murong Yu said faintly. Murong Yu is my master. I'll never betray you. Otherwise, my soul will scatter. I'll never reincarnate. Get up. You don't have to kneel in the future. Murong Yu supported the primordial ominous elephant, which was Xiang Yang, with both hands. At the same time, he felt a little depressed. If he had known that this fellow would submit so easily, he would have reversed time and space and sent him back. Why would there be a need for such a long battle? Xiang Yang, I'm very curious. Why did you suddenly submit to me? Also, I can feel that you're sincerely submitting to me. Is it because I can send you back to the past? Murong Yu could not help but ask in the end. Xiang Yang nodded. If not for my master's ability, I wouldn't submit to you even if I were beaten to death. As for returning to the past, I've always had a regret in my heart. If I don't get to the bottom of that matter, I'll never be at ease. At this point, Murong Yu clearly saw anger, shame, and regret in Xiang Yang's eyes. This fellow was also a person with a story. However, he did not know what had happened. Chapter 1757. Master, I'll hand over the control of the primordial world to you now. After submitting to Murong Yu, Xiang Yang kept his word and handed over the control of the primordial world to Murong Yu. Murong Yu was shocked. Ordinary independent spaces, even if they were as big as the primordial world, did not have origin energy. Although they were independent spaces, they were still in the holy world and were controlled by the holy world's origin energy. Therefore, Murong Yu never thought that the primordial world had control. Feng Yongji and the others never thought of this problem. They only thought that they could take over the primordial world after killing Xiang Yang. However, they were wrong. The primordial world still had control. If Xiang Yang had not mentioned it, they would not have discovered it at all. If they killed Xiang Yang, they would never be able to gain control of the primordial world. Therefore, Murong Yu could not help but think highly of Xiang Yang. The control of the primordial world was very simple. There was no origin energy, and it was equivalent to the control of a formation. After Xiang Yang handed it over to Murong Yu could control the entire primordial world. At that time, Murong Yu would truly gain control of the primordial world. With a thought, Murong Yu's enormous divine consciousness covered the entire primordial world. He wouldn't have known if he hadn't seen it, but when he did, he was shocked. There were just too many treasures in the primordial world. Sacred crystal mines, sacred meridians, and so on could be found everywhere. With the number of disciples Shenzhen had now, they could even live here for a long time. Apart from that, there were some natural treasures scattered all over the primordial world. For example, the various medicinal herbs that were extremely precious in the holy world could be found everywhere here. They grew like weeds. Apart from that, there were also many precious materials for refining weapons. If the 6 holy lands obtained the primordial world, their strength would definitely increase by several times. By then, it would not be a problem for them to unify the holy world. Feng Yongji and the others could even use the various resources here to forcefully break through to the supreme stage. However, all of this was now in the hands of Murong Yu and had become Murong Yu's things. Murong Yu was stupefied by the abundance of resources. Not long after, he made an even more shocking discovery. Although this ancient world was said to be an independent space in the Saint world, it was different from ordinary independent spaces. The immemorial world had completely fused with the sacred world. Furthermore, The space of the immemorial world and the space of the saints' world were of the same origin. Senior, why do I feel like this ancient world seems to have been cut out from the saints' world? Murong, you finally found the origin of the saints' world after a long moment of thought. He voiced his doubts. What do you mean, seems? This world was cut out from the sacred world. It had been carved out by some great being in the ancient times, refined, and fused into the saints' world. Many of the things here are from the primordial era, the source of the sacred world, said in a low, muffled voice. Was that really the case? Murong, you was a little stunned. Just how strong was that person? How could he be so strong? One had to know that with Murong Yu's current strength, he could slice the saints' world into pieces and separate them. However, that was because his strength was infinitely close to that of a supreme being. If it were anyone else, it would be impossible for them to do so. With Murong Yu's current strength, he could destroy a large piece of space in the saints' world, but he could not completely slice it out, let alone fuse it into the saints' world and become an independent space. Murong Yu guessed that even an ordinary supreme being would not be able to do so. The experts of the ancient times were just too strong. Murong Yu did not ask the origin of the saints' world who that person was. Looking at how the origin of the saints' world was gnashing its teeth, he would not get an answer even if he asked. However, this discovery made Murong Yu feel much more at ease. It was of the same origin as the saints' world and had completely fused with it. As such, as long as the entrance was sealed, not many people would be able to find it. Even if they found it, it would not be easy to destroy it. Unless the entire saints' world was destroyed, this ancient world would be destroyed. There was no such person in the saints' world. As long as he moved Shenzhen's sect here, Murong Yu was basically at ease. In the past, the sect was in the Mountain Sea Secret Realm. Although the Mountain Sea Secret Realm could move, it was usually extremely safe. However, if a supreme being appeared, the Mountain Sea Secret Realm would not be strong enough. Therefore, even if a supreme being appeared to deal with Murong Yu would not have any worries. Immediately, after familiarizing himself with the ancient world, Murong Yu began to arrange for Shenzhen to move. Shenzhen's sect was originally in the Mountain Sea Secret Realm, so Murong Yu did not need to spend any effort. With a thought, he could move everyone to the ancient world. However, Murong Yu still kept an eye out and integrated the Mountain Sea Secret Realm into the ancient world. Once a supreme being barged in, Shenzhen's people could also hide in the Mountain Sea Secret Realm and have an additional layer of protection. However, when building the teleportation array, Murong Yu thought for a long time. The entrance to the ancient world was extremely secretive, and it was more like the dragon race. It would change at any time. Therefore, it was not easy for ordinary people to find it. However, it was not easy for Shenzhen's people to find it. Moreover, Murong Yu did not plan to let too many people know about the entrance to the ancient world. After all, there were too many people. If it was accidentally leaked, the ancient world would have no secret at all. However, the teleportation array was the same. Moreover, once the teleportation array was discovered, the enemy could directly teleport in through the teleportation array. If it did not build a teleportation array, Shenzhen's people would not be able to leave. In the end, Murong Yu only built 2 teleportation arrays. Apart from him, only Zhao Jiqing, Murong Xian, Li Ling, and a few other people knew about the teleportation array. As for the other teleportation array, Murong Yu made a lot of preparations. He handed over the control of the teleportation array to Zhao Jiqing, Li Ling, and the others. As long as they felt that something was wrong, they could destroy the teleportation array with just a thought. In this way, Shenzhen would be in the safest state. These things were actually settled very quickly. The ordinary disciples of the 6 great sacred lands were also released by Murong Yu. However, all of their memories of the ancient world had been erased. In fact, Murong Yu had even implanted the memories of the Great Alliance of the human race in their memories. Therefore, after those people regained their freedom, they all joined the Great Alliance of the human race and became the most loyal people of the Great Alliance of the human race. The premise was that the memories that Murong-Yu implanted in their memories had not been erased. On this day, Murong-Yu finally had some free time and looked at Xianyang. In the past few days, Xianyang had always been by Murong-Yu's side. However, this guy was different from before. He was hesitant all day, as if he had something to say to Murong-Yu. However, he seemed to have not made up his mind. Xianyang, do you want to reverse time and go back to the past now? Murong-Yu finally could not stand it anymore and asked directly. The strength of the ancient mammoth was extremely terrifying. Murong-Yu might have subdued him and nurtured him as his right-hand man. After all, how many experts of this level were there in the Holy World? Once Murong-Yu began to unify the Holy World, Xianyang would be one of Murong-Yu's most powerful subordinates. Xianyang was stunned. Then he hesitated, but soon his expression became resolute. He looked at Murong-Yu and nodded solemnly. Master, please reverse time and send me back 500 billion years ago. It's time to settle that matter. As he spoke, a hint of hatred flashed through Xianyang's eyes. 500 billion years ago, which was half an epoch ago, was nothing difficult for Murong-Yu. I could send you back to the past. However, you must remember that you can't attack after you return to the past. You can't kill anyone or change anything at that time. Otherwise, you might be annihilated in the river of time. The primordial world will also be annihilated because of your actions. Before reversing time and space, Murong-Yu warned sternly. Once a certain ferocious beast or Xianyang died at that time, there would be no such thing. Everything would be annihilated. That was why Murong-Yu warned him. Of course, this was because Xianyang wanted to return to the same space-time. Although the people who were reversed by Murong-Yu would return to the past, they would not be in the same space-time. They could only watch but could not touch it. Xianyang nodded. He only needed to investigate that matter. As for when he would settle it, it was the same. Murong-Yu immediately used the law of time to reverse time and space, sending Xianyang back to 500 billion years ago. Xianyang was extremely excited. That matter had troubled him for half an epoch. He was about to find out everything. However, he had just stepped into the primordial world 500 billion years ago when an inexplicable force pulled him back to the present space-time. Looking at Murong-Yu, Xianyang was speechless and confused. He did not know why Murong-Yu suddenly pulled him back. Murong-Yu smiled embarrassedly. Xianyang, I forgot to tell you something. You only have a year. You must return within a year. Otherwise, you will drift in the river of time forever and be alone for the rest of your life. With that, Murong-Yu told Xianyang how to return. Otherwise, Murong-Yu could not guarantee that he would still have time to pull Xianyang back after a year. If he accidentally forgot or was delayed by other matters, Xianyang would be in trouble. After exhorting Xianyang once more, Murong-Yu finally sent him back. A year was not a long time, but it was enough for Xianyang. At that moment, the matter in the primordial world had come to an end. Murong-Yu brought Shenzhen and many experts on the Saint ranking back to the Human Clan Alliance. At that moment, many experts on the Saint ranking from the Demon Clan and the Sacred Clan had returned to the Sacred World. They were filled with killing intent and were about to launch another war to destroy the Human Clan Alliance. The war would erupt again. Chapter 1758. According to the information that Xian Junhua had sent down from the Chaos Layer, Murong-Yu knew that less than a tenth of the experts on the Saint rankings were left in the Chaos Layer. Over 90% of the experts on the Saint rankings had returned from the Chaos Layer and returned to their respective races. They were all frightened by Murong-Yu's terrifying strength. Moreover, they knew that Murong-Yu would definitely take revenge on the demonic beast race and the sacred race for destroying almost the entire human race. Although they were all in the Chaos Layer, the Saints' world was their foundation. Once their race was annihilated, they would be left alone. Moreover, no one could guarantee that Murong-Yu would not kill them as well. As a result, they all returned to the Saints' world. After returning to the Saints' world, they even joined forces of their own accord, forming the Saint Alliance, the Demons Alliance, and so on. They discussed how they would attack Murong-Yu again and kill him. However, they were shocked by Murong-Yu's strength. As a result, they could not decide whether they should attack again or take the initiative to defend when Murong-Yu attacked. In response to this, Murong-Yu held a meeting in the Great Alliance of Humans. In the meeting, there were people who took the initiative to defend. After all, the human race had suffered heavy losses and lost a portion of their peak experts. It could be said that they had suffered a great loss. The sacred race and demonic beast race had also lost many experts on the saint rankings. However, they had a large number of experts on the saint rankings. According to these people's theory, they should conserve their strength and preserve the elites of the human race. However, there were even more people who suggested taking the initiative to attack and suppress the sacred race and demonic beast race. Then, the human race would unify the saint world. These people were all in favor of the idea, and they were all extremely excited. They all knew the current strength of the human race. Without the emergence of sovereigns, the Great Alliance of Humans did indeed have a chance of unifying the saint world. If they could unify the saint world, they would be able to accomplish what their ancestors had never done. Then, they would be able to leave their names in the annals of history and become the supreme heroes of the human race. Even if they could not maintain their rule for long after unifying the saints' world, they would accept it. Although it only lasted for a short time, it left behind an incomparable fragrance and breathtaking beauty. For a moment, Murong-Yu hesitated. Apart from Xian Junhua, who was ranked 5th, and Dongmen Lishuan, who was ranked 3rd, the rest of the top 5 on the saint rankings were ranked 5th. The 1st, 2nd, and 4th were all very secretive. Murong-Yu still did not know their identities. Was it the human race, the saint race, or the monster race? Xian Junhua and Dongmen Lishuan would definitely not side with the demon race and holy race. However, the same could not be said for the other 3. In fact, Murong-Yu's real concern wasn't the 3 of them, but those supreme martial artists who hadn't appeared for a long time. Aside from the sovereigns, the autarchs were the greatest threat. Even if Murong-Yu could unify the saints' world, if the sovereigns were to take action, Murong-Yu's advantage would be turned around overnight. It was even possible that the entire human race would be wiped out. Of the 2 human autarchs, Autarch Peerless was fine since Murong-Yu did not control the Peerless Palace. However, the same could not be said for Autarch True Martial. Murong-Yu had devoured his legacy and legacy. If Autarch True Martial were to return, he would probably slap Murong-Yu in the face. Make your preparations and increase your strength. I need to think about this carefully. Murong-Yu instructed before disappearing. When he reappeared, he was already in front of Hichu Luoshu's seal of Nuwa's Sacred Hall. Nuwa's Sacred Hall was a supreme artifact that Murong-Yu had obtained long ago. It was the personal palace of Autarch Nuwa. If Murong-Yu wanted to know where the autarchs had gone, he could only ask Nuwa, who was also a autarch. Autarch Nuwa, Lady Nuwa, Great Goddess Nuwa. Murong-Yu got straight to the point and called out. However, Nuwa did not respond at all. However, Murong-Yu did not give up. He knew Nuwa's true body might have died, but a sliver of her soul was still attached to Nuwa's Sacred Hall. In the past few years, Murong-Yu had been using the force of his soul to nourish her soul. She had probably recovered quite a bit by now. As a result, Murong-Yu used his soul to envelop the entire Sacred Hall as he constantly called for Autarch Nuwa. Swish! Finally, more than half a day later, Murong-Yu's soul entered a large hall. Inside the main hall, an extremely beautiful woman was lazily lying on the main seat and looking at Murong-Yu with a smile in her eyes. She was dressed in light gauze and gauze. Don't you know that disturbing a woman's beauty sleep is the most impolite thing you can do? Nuwa's voice was like the sound of nature. Although it was an interrogative question, there was no questioning tone. Murong-Yu chuckled and sat down on a chair in the hall. Autarch Nuwa, what kind of strength do you have? You're devastatingly beautiful. Why would you need a beauty sleep? Nviwa chuckled and didn't bother arguing with Murong-Yu anymore. Her expression also turned serious. She knew that Murong-Yu wouldn't visit her if he didn't need something. Thus, she began to ask. Murong-Yu didn't beat around the bush and went straight to the point. Nuwa's beautiful brows furrowed slightly as she looked at Morongyu. You want to know where the autarchs are? You know about the existence of the Outlands? Morongyu nodded. That was all he knew. He didn't know the specifics. He didn't even know what the autarchs were doing in the Outlands. What were they fighting against? Were they fighting against the Outlands beasts, such as desolates? Or were they fighting against an Outland civilization? Morongyu knew about the existence of the Sun Monarch. The Sun Monarch was simply too powerful. He had definitely surpassed hegemons. This allowed Morongyu to deduce that the Sacred Realm was definitely not the only civilization in the endless primordial chaos. There were definitely other civilizations outside the Sacred Realm, and some of them were even more powerful than the Sacred Realm. He could tell from the Sun Monarch. Then, were the autarchs fighting against the experts of the Outland civilization? Nuwa was shocked. She stared at Morongyu in disbelief. You actually know so much. Outlands. Outlands. These were all taboo existences in the Sacred Realm. Apart from the autarchs, no one below the autarch level could possibly know about them. This was because there was no benefit to them at all. Moreover, this was the result of generations of hegemons deliberately blocking this information. Right now, everyone in the Sacred Realm believed that hegemons were the most powerful existences and that hegemons controlled the Sacred Realm. Hegemons could not be surpassed. They could not be killed, because they cannot be killed. And this was exactly what every hegemon wanted to see. They wanted to stabilize their rule, so they could not allow anyone to surpass them. Everyone believed that they were the most powerful existences and that they could not be surpassed. Naturally, there were not many who cultivated as hard as they could to surpass them. But once everyone in the Sacred Realm knew that there were people above hegemons, and that there were civilizations outside the Sacred Realm, would they still cultivate peacefully? Every single one of them wanted to become even more powerful, surpass hegemons, defeat them, and leave the Sacred Realm. If they came down, the hegemons of the Sacred Realm really might be killed. In truth, quite a few hegemons of the Sacred Realm had already been killed. The current Heaven Monarch had only taken his position after killing the previous hegemon. Empress Nuwa, I know what the Outlands are. What are the autarchs doing? Are they fighting against the Outlands? Seeing that Nuwa did not answer, Morongyu could not help but ask again. Nuwa fell silent. She only frowned slightly as she looked at Morongyu. A trace of hesitation flashed through her eyes. She was hesitating whether or not she should tell Morongyu. With Morongyu's current strength, it was time for him to find out. Once he became an autarch, he would naturally know everything, and Nuwa needed Morongyu to revive her. As a result, she sighed wistfully and said slowly, in the Sacred Realm, hegemons are absolute experts. Even if all the autarchs worked together, they would not be able to withstand a single blow from hegemons. It is precisely because of this that hegemons possess absolute power. Very long ago, they strictly ordered all the autarchs to leave the Sacred Realm and fight in the Outlands. During this time, they are not allowed to return to the Sacred Realm, or they will be killed without mercy. The autarchs are fighting against various beasts and desolates in the Outlands. As for the experts of the Outlands, they are people who can travel through the endless cosmos. The autarchs of the Sacred Realm are not their opponents at all. Those people are so powerful that even hegemons are no match for them. If it weren't for the Sacred Realm, even hegemons might be slain. It is precisely because of their strength that hegemons and autarchs are eager to take action. They all want to become so powerful that they can travel the cosmos. However, even hegemons are unable to leave the Sacred Realm, to say nothing of autarchs. As a result, both hegemons and autarchs do not fight against desolates, beasts, or the experts of the Outlands. They fight for themselves. Even hegemons are unable to leave the Sacred Realm and travel the endless cosmos. Morongyu frowned slightly, finding this difficult to understand. This involves many complicated questions. You will slowly understand them in the future. Let me give you a rough overview. The reason why we are unable to leave the Sacred Realm and travel the endless cosmos is because we have not undergone the cycle of reincarnation. Only by undergoing the cycle of reincarnation will we have the strength to travel the endless cosmos. Moronyu was confused. What is the cycle of reincarnation? How? Nuwa first shook her head, and then her eyes flickered with hatred. In the sacred realm, perhaps only the hegemon knows about the cycle of reincarnation. We autarchs do not know. I died precisely because the hegemon attempted to undergo the cycle of reincarnation. He killed me. Moronyu was stunned. He stared at Nuwa in disbelief. He knew that Nuwa's enemy was definitely not weak, but he had never imagined that it would be the hegemon. The hegemon has never been able to undergo the cycle of reincarnation. However, as a chaos celestial, you have the potential to become a controller of primordial chaos. You need to be careful of the hegemon possessing your body. Nuwa suddenly said in an incomparably solemn voice. Morongyu's heart sank. However, he had long since predicted that the hegemon would act. Chapter 1759. The sovereign is constantly trying to break through the cycle of reincarnation, leaping out of the sacred realm and roaming the stars. However, he's never been able to do so, and your body is the best choice for him. The only reason he hasn't done anything to you yet is because you're still very weak. You can't withstand his soul. My guess is that once you become an autarch, or even stronger, the sovereign will make his move. Autarch Nuwa's eyes flashed as she looked at Moronyu. A nonchalant smile appeared on Morongyu's face. My body is a delicious piece of cake. Everyone wants to take it. However, no one has ever been able to take it. No matter how strong an autarch is, I won't submit. If he wants my body, he can come and take it from me. At worst, we'll just go our separate ways. Moronyu spoke very casually, but his heart was extremely heavy. The sovereign's power was like an ancient sacred mountain floating above his head, giving him tremendous pressure. What if I continue to suppress my cultivation? Morongyu's heart suddenly stirred, and he blurted this out. Nuwa shook her head. If you don't break through, even if I do, the sovereign will make his move. I'll capture you and directly increase your strength. Then, I'll take over your body. Moronyu felt somewhat depressed. Didn't this mean that he had no choice but to increase his strength? Moronyu, you must remember to keep a low profile. Even if you become an autarch, it's best not to reveal your strength unless you have the confidence to deal with the sovereign. Otherwise, it'll be a disaster for you. If you have the confidence to break through the cycle of reincarnation, you must do so. Once you do, the sovereign will be no match for you, no matter how powerful he is. Breaking through the cycle of reincarnation isn't just about strength, it's also about luck. If you're lucky enough to break through the cycle of reincarnation, your strength will skyrocket, and you'll surpass the sovereign. If not, you can just leave the sacred realm. When that happens, the sovereign won't be able to do anything to you. How do I break through the cycle of reincarnation? What is it? Moronyu was rather interested in this. Nuwa was silent for a moment, as if she was organizing her thoughts. After a long time, she said slowly, every world actually has life, but it's not truly eternal. It's just that the lifespan of each world is too long, so long that even the Supremes feel like they have eternal life. The calculation method of life in this world is reincarnation. One reincarnation was 1 year in the holy world. A single reincarnation cycle is equivalent to 1 trillion eras of time in our holy world. Samsara is also known as the Samsara era. Moronyu nodded. An epoch was equivalent to 1 trillion years, and a reincarnation epoch was equivalent to 1 trillion epochs. This lifespan was indeed too long. The saints' world probably hadn't experienced many reincarnation cycles since the immemorial era. As for how many reincarnation cycles had already existed in the saint world, Moronyu did not know. Most likely, not even the sovereigns were aware of this. The only thing he could possibly know was the origin energy of the saint's world. However, the saint's world origin that Moronyu had obtained was incomplete. It lacked a lot of information, so Moronyu had no idea. Legend has it that the lifespan of each world is limited. Once the lifespan is exhausted, the world and everything in it will be destroyed, returning to primal chaos. Thus, if you don't want to die, you can only transcend reincarnation. Moron Yu frowned slightly. These legends were all legends. They might be true, but they might also be false. Regardless of whether they were true or false, was there anyone who could transcend reincarnation? I've heard that a long time ago, there were indeed people who could transcend reincarnation in our holy world. They avoided being destroyed by the destruction of the world. However, our holy world is simply too weak. Our cultivators are generally weak. The chances of successfully transcending reincarnation aren't high. There's almost a 100% chance of failure. Failure would mean complete annihilation. In the end, there was only one problem. The chances of transcending reincarnation were infinitely close to zero. In the holy world, no one was a match for the sovereigns. However, this did not affect Moron Yu. In the holy world, Moron Yu at least had the saint's world origin to fight against the sovereigns. As long as he was strong enough, it would not be easy for the sovereigns to kill him. As for reincarnation, he had to try it. However, he had to make sufficient preparations and be strong enough before he could attempt it. He could sense that the civilizations outside the holy world were the true battlegrounds for hundreds of schools of thought. That was the true stage for cultivators. It was the world stage that Moron Yu pursued. However, Moron Yu had a question. Where was reincarnation? How was he supposed to transcend it? Yua was unable to answer this question. All she said was, once you reach a certain level of cultivation, you will be able to sense the existence of reincarnation. At that time, transcending reincarnation will only take a single thought. In the following time, Moron Yu discussed things with Autark Yua in detail. However, Autark Yua didn't know much about reincarnation. Still, during their conversation, he gained a rough understanding of the sovereigns and autarchs. There was only one sovereign in the holy world, but there were more than 10 autarchs. Generally speaking, there were only 10 autarchs in the holy world. For example, the human race's autarch, True Martial, and autarch Peerless were both part of the 10 autarchs. In truth, apart from the 10 autarchs, there were other autarchs. These autarchs were far stronger than the experts on the holy rankings. However, there were far too few of them. There were definitely no more than 2,000 of them. So why was it that there were only 10 autarchs in the holy world? That was because the 10 autarchs were the strongest of the autarchs. They were called titled autarchs. They were existences that countless autarchs acknowledged. The remaining autarchs had the strength of an autarch. However, their strength and prestige weren't acknowledged by the majority of autarchs because they didn't have the title of autarch. At most, they possessed the strength of an autarch, but they weren't autarchs. Strictly speaking, they were still autarchs. Whether in terms of strength or status, there was a huge gap between them and the 10 autarchs. Right now, the human race has 2 titled autarchs. The demon race also has 2, while the sacred race has more, with a total of 5, Yua said. Only 9? Where's the last one? There's still one more position. Many autarchs want it, but no one can convince the masses. As a result, there are only 9 autarchs in the holy world. Autarch Yua sneered. She had once been one of the 10 autarchs. The heavenly enchantress had also been one of them. However, it had been far too long since they died. Their positions had long since been taken by others. Moreover, those titled autarchs who had been acknowledged by the masses had some benefits. They could use an extremely small portion of the holy world's origin energy. As a result, they were far stronger than any ordinary autarch. They could even easily kill ordinary supreme being experts. It was for this reason that every autarch wanted to become a titled autarch. However, there were only 10 of them. Most autarchs were fighting in the outer realms or cultivating in seclusion in an attempt to break through the cycle of reincarnation. In addition, there were the restrictions between autarchs and autarchs. Very few autarchs would even return to the holy world. In their eyes, they had already surpassed the holy world. They disdained to associate themselves with the people of the holy world. There was another reason for this. The people of the holy world were their foundation. If these autarchs were to take action, they could easily destroy the holy world. Once the people of the holy world were all dead, how could there be more autarchs in the future? As a result, autarchs were forbidden from participating in the Great War of the Holy World. There were autarchs who participated in the Great War of the Immemorial Era. At that time, the entire Holy World was almost destroyed. In the end, the autarchs came to an agreement with each other. This was the reason why the autarchs didn't appear in the world. Didn't they say that saints couldn't leave the Holy World? Where's the outer realm? Moron-yu asked doubtfully. If the Holy World is compared to a house, then the outer realm is the garden around the house. We can move freely in the garden, but we can't leave the garden and appear outside. Niwa gave a vivid analogy. Moron-yu immediately understood. In that case, I'm relieved. Moron-yu's eyes shone brightly. The reason why he hadn't taken action to unify the Holy World was because he was worried that the autarchs would come out and cause trouble. However, he was no longer afraid. Goddess Niwa, when I'm strong enough, I'll definitely revive you. Moron-yu bowed to the languid Niwa. Then, he left Niwa's sacred hall without waiting for her to speak. Niwa opened her mouth. She seemed to have something to say. However, Moron-yu had already left. As a result, she rolled her eyes helplessly. This kid is really anxious. I wanted to say that once the demon race and the sacred race are forced into a corner, their autarchs will still return. Since you're so anxious, I'll let you suffer a little and learn from it. If Moron-yu were to hear those words, he'd probably vomit blood from anger, because not long after, he suffered a little because of those autarchs. And this little loss almost caused the entire human race to be annihilated. After returning to the Human Race Alliance, Moron-yu didn't start the war immediately. He needed to wait for Xiangyang to return before starting the war. After all, if the Human Clan's Great Alliance had an expert like Xiangyang overseeing it, it would be much stronger and safer than having Moron-yu overseeing alone. While waiting for Xiangyang, Moron-yu brought Shenzhen and some of the core upper echelons of the Human Race Alliance into the Hichu Luoshu. He accelerated time to the limit and got them to start devouring chaos gems to cultivate. As for Moron-yu, he returned to the depths of the chaos layer. He began to condense chaos gems day and night without sleeping. In a war, the more powerful the human race was, the lower their losses would be. Unexpectedly, the saints' world fell silent. However, the atmosphere was rather oppressive. This was the calm before the storm. A storm was brewing. Chapter 1760. In Hichu Luoshu, more than 20,000 experts on the saint ranking sat cross-legged in a separate space. The surrounding supreme-grade chaos gems were piled up like a small mountain beside them for them to use. The worst of the chaos gems were first-grade chaos gems, while the best ones far surpassed them. Hence, they called them supreme-grade chaos gems. They had no idea where the chaos gems came from. Even Xian Junhua, the hall master of the Holy Execution Hall, had never seen a chaos crystal that was so pure and contained such terrifying primal chaos energy. In fact, the chaos gems were condensed by Moron-yu himself. Previously, he had condensed hundreds of millions of chaos gems. Now that he was stronger, his speed of condensing chaos gems was faster. These experts on the saint ranking were Moron-yu's strongest subordinates. Moron-yu was never stingy with his own people. He was rather generous. They had enough chaos gems. Use as you please. After the initial excitement, Shenzhen's experts on the saint ranking calmed down and started to refine the chaos gems with all their might to reach a higher level. 1 year was not a long time. It happened in the blink of an eye. However, due to Hichu Luoshu's acceleration ability, the time they spent was calculated in epochs. At that moment, there were more experts gathered below the saint ranking in the chaos level. However, there were very few experts on the saint ranking. Most of them were rank 9 chaotic ancestor saints. At that moment, their faces were filled with shock. One of the experts on the saint ranking said with a trembling voice, "What happened in the past few months?" Why did a large number of experts on the Saint ranking increase in ranking? In the past, the experts on the Saint ranking did not change much. Even if there was a change, there would only be 1 or 2 changes every few years. However, the changes in the ranking of the Saint rankings had become rather frequent recently. A few years ago, it was still fine. Only Morongyu and a few others changed. However, there were more than 20,000 people who had a change in ranking. Although these people's rankings on the holy rankings didn't change much, generally jumping forward by 1 or 2 places, the holy rankings didn't change much. However, it should be known that some of the experts on the Saint rankings were ranked higher. Their rankings had also risen. Why does it seem like a collective increase in strength? But these people didn't belong to the same faction. Even if they are from the same faction, who has the ability to help so many of them increase their strength at the same time? A doubtful voice came from the crowd. If there really is such a force, I also want to join. A peak 9th stage primal chaos ancestor saint said. His face was filled with envy. Could it be that they have all entered a special space? And what kind of treasures do you have in that space? For a time, this guess spread throughout the entire chaos layer. Thus, countless experts began to search for this so-called special space. But in the end, it was all useless. There was indeed such a space, and that was the Hichu Luo Shu. It was impossible for those people to find Hichu Luo Shu. A year passed quickly. During this period of time, the experts on the Saint ranking in the Hichu Luo Shu world had all made breakthroughs of varying degrees. The highest ranking on the Saint rankings had even leaped over 10,000 ranks. Even the weakest of them had leaped dozens of ranks. It could be said that in this year, the experts on the Saint ranking had greatly increased their strength. In the Hichu Luo Shu, all the experts on the Saint ranking who were cultivating in seclusion slowly opened their eyes and stood up slowly. The experts on the Saint rankings were overjoyed when they sensed that they had become stronger. But soon, they were reluctant to part with it, because they still wanted to continue cultivating. However, they had already received Murongyu's message to stop cultivating from now on. That was why they had woken up. Sigh, if I can continue cultivating in seclusion, my ranking on the Saint ranking will be even higher. I don't know if there will be another chance like this in the future. Without time acceleration and chaos gems, it will be difficult to increase my strength in the future. The experts on the Saint ranking all had the same thought. As if he knew what they were thinking, Murongyu's voice rang in their ears with a smile. There will be more opportunities like this in the future. But now we have important things to do. As for the remaining chaos gems, you can keep them. Hearing that, everyone was stunned at first, then they were overjoyed. Therefore, each of them waved their hands and stored the leftover chaos gems, which were still piled up like a mountain, into their own spatial treasures. Thank you, Holy Lord. After an expert on the Saint ranking kept the chaos gems in his space treasure, he realized that he had not thanked Murongyu. Hence, he thanked him loudly and sincerely. The others also thanked Murongyu. Murongyu only faintly smiled in response. With a thought, he placed them in the great alliance of the human race. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The interior of Tiangang Mountain was extremely huge. After the 20,000 experts on the Saint ranking appeared, they moved and disappeared into the distance in an instant. My lord, I'm back. In the hall, Murongyu sat on the main seat. A tall figure walked in from outside. After seeing Murongyu, he bowed deeply and said in a deep voice, this person was Xiang Yang, who had been sent back to the past by Murongyu. Murongyu looked at Xiang Yang. At that moment, Xiang Yang no longer had the remorse and regret from before. He only had a sigh of relief and relief. During this period of time, Murongyu basically understood why Xiang Yang had returned to the past. As mentioned previously, there were only 2 primordial ominous elephants in the primordial world. One was naturally Xiang Yang, while the other had disappeared half an era ago. Although that ominous elephant was not Xiang Yang's descendant, it had been raised by Xiang Yang since it was young. However, half an era ago, that small ominous elephant had disappeared into thin air. No one knew where it had gone. No one knew if it was alive or dead. This happened when Xiangyang was in seclusion. When Xiangyang found out about this, he was furious and killed many related ferocious beasts. However, it was useless. There was still no trace of the small, ominous elephant. It was as if the small, ominous elephant had never appeared. This matter had always troubled Xiangyang, and had always made him feel regretful. However, with the help of Murong Yu's ability, he finally understood the matter. My lord, I've already investigated the matter. Xiang, he has left the primordial world. As if he knew what Murong Yu wanted to ask, Xiangyang spoke before Murong Yu could ask. Murong Yu nodded. Xiangyang must have confirmed that Xiang he had not died, so he heaved a sigh of relief. However, Murong Yu clearly saw the hope and anticipation that flashed across Xiangyang's face. Furthermore, the depths of Xiangyang's eyes were filled with concern. However, the ferocious beasts of the primordial world were unable to leave the primordial world. Otherwise, Xiangyang would have left the primordial world long ago. However, how did Xiang he leave the primordial world? Half an epoch ago, Elephant River was swallowed by a spatial rift. I think that's why he could leave the primordial world and appear in the saint's world, Xiang he explained. He had returned to the past and witnessed Xiang he being swallowed by the spatial crack with his own eyes. However, Xiang he's soul jade slip in his hand had never shattered. This was also the basis for Xiangyang's belief that Xiang he was still alive. Now, Xiangyang wanted to leave the primordial world to search for Xiang he. However, he could not leave the primordial world. As a result, he had to rely on Murong Yu. Xiangyang felt even more fortunate about his previous decision. If it were not for Murong Yu, he would not have been able to return to the past and investigate the matter. If he had not submitted to Murong Yu, he would not have known about Xiang he at all, nor would he have been able to leave the primordial world because he might have been killed by Murong Yu. Go and rest for a few days. After a few days, we'll leave the primordial world. Murong Yu's eyes shone brightly as he ordered Xiangyang to leave. A few days later, Murong Yu brought Xiangyang, Shengzhen, the experts on the Saint ranking, and other core upper echelons out of the primordial world and appeared in the Human Clan Alliance. In the primordial world, there were only a few people and forces who were on good terms with Shengzhen and Murong Yu. Fan Tong and the rest were naturally among them. At the same time, Unparalleled Palace and Purple Thunder Hall were also moved to the primordial world. As for the other sanctuaries, they were still in the Holy World. In the main hall of the Human Clan Alliance's headquarters on Tiangang Mountain, close to 30,000 experts on the Saint ranking sat on both sides of the main hall. These were the upper echelons of the Human Clan Alliance. Most of them were experts on the Saint ranking. Other than the experts that Murong Yu had subdued previously, there were all the experts on the Saint ranking from the Saint Execution Hall. They had also cultivated in Hichu, Luoshu previously. The Demon Clan and the Sacred Clan will not give up on killing us. Although we have repelled them this time, they will launch a second, third, or even more wars. They will continue until the Human Clan is annihilated. As a member of the Human Clan and the leader of the Human Clan Alliance, I can't let this continue. If the Demon Clan and the Sacred Clan don't want to annihilate the Human Clan, then we must suppress them all before they launch a second war. The ruler of the Holy World is the Human Clan, not the Demon Clan or the Sacred Clan. Do you have a confidence? Do you have the confidence to unify the Holy World? To become an existence whose name will be passed down through the ages? Yes, Murong Yu's words were not very emotional, but they still made everyone's blood boil. Especially the Human Clan experts, their morale was high. They could not wait to annihilate the Demon Clan and the Sacred Clan and unify the Holy World. All right, this time we will annihilate the Demon Clan first. Li Ling, I will leave the command of the army to you. I will give you half a year. After half a year, I want the Human Clan's army to kill the Demon Clan. We will be invincible and victorious. Chapter 1761. Li Ling couldn't help but laugh. Master, there's no need for half a year. Our human army has already gathered. You just need to give the order, and our army can suppress the border and exterminate the demon race. A glint flashed across Murong Yu's eyes. All right, leave some of the Saint Leaderboard experts to guard the human alliance in case the sacred race and demon race experts come and destroy our rear. The rest of the Saint Leaderboard experts will lead the human army and follow me to defeat the demon race. Murong Yu immediately left some of the Saint Leaderboard experts behind. The Saint Leaderboard experts who were chosen to stay behind were extremely depressed. Who didn't want to follow the army into the war? After all, although the war was accompanied by the danger of death, there were more benefits. As long as they didn't die, everyone's strength would more or less increase after the war. Not to mention the various resources and benefits they would obtain in the war, although they had a hand over everything they snatched from the enemy. However, not everything had to be handed over. If they defeated the demon race, their gains would be extremely terrifying. You don't have to be so depressed. We're only attacking the demon race now. Once the demon race is defeated, it'll be your turn to attack the sacred race. This was what Murong Yu planned long ago. It was also because of this that the Saint Leaderboard experts were willing to stay behind to guard the human race's base camp. In the human race's territory, other than the Human Alliance's headquarters at Big Dipper Mountain, there were 108 other branches. Unlike before, each of these branches had a large number of troops, and they were training every day. When Li Ling sent a message, these troops began to gather. Then, Murong Yu personally took action. Big Dipper Branch. It was the branch closest to the great alliance of the human race, and also the most powerful one. At this moment, the sky above the branch suddenly split open, and a large foot stepped out from the depths of the void. The next to appear was a black-clothed young man who didn't seem to be very muscular. This person was Murong Yu. When they saw Murong Yu appear, everyone in the branch involuntarily knelt down. In their hearts, Murong Yu was equivalent to their savior. Murong Yu's position in their hearts was supreme, and no one could shake it. Murong Yu nodded slightly, and then said lightly, "Everyone, get up. There's no need to kneel when you see me in the future. Remember, all of us are equal, and there is no difference between us." Before he could finish speaking, Murong Yu had already disappeared from where he stood. His voice lingered in the air above the branch for a long time. "We are all equal. There is no difference in strength between us." However, Murong Yu's words spread far and wide, making Murong Yu's position in the hearts of the people even higher. No one could shake his position. In the square, after Murong Yu appeared, he saw a pair of neatly arranged troops. This was the army of the human race. Even the weakest of them was an ancient sage. Ancient sages, ancestral sages, and primal chaos ancestral sages. The soldiers were all saints of these two levels. Most of the leaders were at the primal chaos ancestral saint level. There were not many people in the square, only about 1 million. These were the vanguard troops of the Human Race Alliance. The vanguard naturally had to be the strongest. After the soldiers saw Murong Yu, they all showed excitement on their faces, and their eyes flickered with a fanatical light. Murong Yu did not say a word, directly took out the Hichu Luo Shu, and then, with a wave of his hand, directly put them into the Hichu Luo Shu. Then, Murong Yu also entered the Hichu Luo Shu. When he appeared again, he was already in the next branch. 108 branches went through one by one, and it did not even take half a day. This speed of mobilizing troops could be said to be godly. In the entire holy world, only Murong Yu had such efficiency. 108 million elite troops, more than 10,000 saint-level experts. In the Hichu Luo Shu, these 100 million elite troops were divided into 10,000 small teams by Murong Yu. Each small team had exactly 10,000 people, and 10 small teams formed a medium team, a total of 1,000 medium teams. 1,000 medium teams formed 100 large teams. Each small team had a small team leader, and this small team leader had to be an expert on the saint level. In addition to the small team leader, there was also a vice small team leader who was at the primal chaos ancestral saint level. In addition to the vice small team leader, there was also a military advisor who was not very strong, but in terms of strategy, he had to be better than the average person. It It was the same for the medium teams and large teams. However, the vice small team leader and the large team leader were all experts on the saint level. The small team leader took orders from the small team leader, and the small team leader was under the jurisdiction of the large team leader. As for the large team leader, he was directly under Murong Yu's command. This time, the Human Race Alliance had sent over 10,000 experts on the saint level. In other words, excluding the 12,200 small team leaders, and large team leaders, there were still around 2,000 experts on the saint level. These experts and the remaining 8 million elite troops formed the logistics team, which meant that they were responsible for cleaning up the battlefield and taking care of the injured soldiers. In addition, Murong Yu had also transferred a portion of the experts on the saint level and saints to form his own guard team. Although Murong Yu could not use them, he still needed people to run errands and pass on orders. The Broken Mountain Range. This was the mountain range that bordered the human race and the demon race. The Broken Mountain Range was high and lofty, towering into the clouds. However, the entire mountain range was like a huge rock that stretched across the border between the human race and the demon race. However, this huge rock seemed to have been cut in half by a knife, and both sides were very smooth. Ordinary people would find it difficult to climb. The Broken Mountain Range was also filled with wild beasts that ran rampant. Primal chaos, ancestral saint-level beasts could be found everywhere. Therefore, because of the Broken Mountain Range, there were very few humans and demons who crossed the Broken Mountain Range and appeared in the enemy's territory. The Broken Mountain Range was a veritable moat that blocked communication between the human race and the demon race. However, today a black figure flew over from the human race's side. From afar, the human who flew at extreme speed was a young man in black. The young man shuttled through the void and did not stop even when he arrived at the Broken Mountain Range. Instead, he flew straight over. Roar, roar, roar. As soon as the young man in black rushed into the Broken Mountain Range, waves of terrifying beast roars erupted from the Broken Mountain Range. One by one, the ferocious beasts soared into the sky and pounced on the young man in black. Humph! The young man in black snorted coldly, and an aura that was millions of times more powerful than these beasts erupted from his body. With his body as the center, it swept out in all directions like a tide. Rumble wherever it passed, the void would shatter. The boulders and trees on the Broken Mountain Range would explode from the pressure. As for those ferocious beasts that shook the heavens, they let out a series of mournful wails. Because of this terrifying aura, they really prostrated themselves on the ground, motionless. In fact, they did not dare to move, nor could they move. Seeing this, the young man in black snorted again. He did not kill these beasts. Instead, he took a step forward and disappeared on the spot. Broken Mountain City was one of the most famous cities in the demon race. Because it was close to the Broken Mountain Range, it attracted many powerhouses every day. As a result, the city was extremely prosperous. On this day, Broken Mountain City was as lively as usual. However, for some reason, an extremely oppressive feeling suddenly appeared on all the demon race saints in Broken Mountain City. Moreover, as time passed, this oppressive feeling grew stronger and stronger. Suddenly, a sharp-eyed powerhouse on the saint rankings pointed in the direction of the Broken Mountain Range and screamed. His voice was filled with fear. What's that? Are the beasts on the Broken Mountain Range coming to massacre the city? Everyone was shocked. They followed that person's gaze and almost fainted when they saw who it was. In the distance, a large dark cloud that covered the sky was flying over at an extremely terrifying speed. An extremely terrifying aura broke through hundreds of millions of space-time and swept over quickly. And the oppressive feeling they felt came from this dark cloud. However, this was not a dark cloud. It was clearly a large group of beasts. However, that was not a beast, but a well-trained saint. Were those coming from the Broken Mountain Range humans? In an instant, this thought appeared in the minds of everyone in Broken Mountain City. Many of those who reacted quickly had already fled toward the rear. Boom! 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 However, just as they were fleeing, Several terrifying auras that contained the power to destroy heaven and earth had already torn through the void and rushed over at an extremely fast speed. Before those people could react, they had already been devoured. After a few muffled explosions, those people who were fleeing first were blown into a bloody mist and died an unnatural death. Demons of Broken Mountain City, listen up. Disarm, and we will spare your lives. Otherwise, we will kill you. A thunderous voice came from afar, containing a terrifying aura. It shook the hearts of many demon race powerhouses in Broken Mountain City, and some were even directly knocked over. The human army. At this moment, the demon race in Broken Mountain City finally reacted. Their expressions changed instantly. Of course, it was impossible for them to be so obedient. Some of them had already activated the teleportation formation in an attempt to escape. However, at this moment, hundreds of figures appeared in the sky above Broken Mountain City, and some even appeared directly beside the teleportation formation. All of them were powerhouses on the Saint rankings. The power that erupted from these hundreds of people enveloped the entire Broken Mountain City, and the powerful aura even made the powerhouses on the Saint rankings in Broken Mountain City tremble in fear. Not only were they powerful, but there were also many of them. Although there were powerhouses on the Saint rankings in Broken Mountain City, there were less than 10 of them. Now, these people wished they could dig a hole and bury themselves in it so that the humans would not discover them. It was even more impossible for them to go out and fight. This was because they all knew that if they dared to fight, only death would await them. In fact, the human powerhouses on the Saint rankings might not even give them a chance to speak before they were killed. Chapter 1762. Even powerhouses on the Saint rankings did not dare to move, let alone other Demon Clan powerhouses of other ranks. For a time, hundreds of millions of Demon Clan powerhouses in Broken Mountain City were suppressed to the ground. Although their bodies were trembling, they did not dare to raise their heads. In just a short while, the human army of hundreds of millions had arrived. Their morale was high and soaring. Under the impact of this terrifying aura, countless saints in Broken Mountain City were suppressed to the point where they trembled in fear and did not dare to make sound. Lay down your weapons, and we will spare your lives. Hand over all your treasures, or we will kill you without mercy. A thunderous voice came from the human army. Following that, a burly man who looked like an iron tower strode out. His entire body was filled with murderous intent. Following behind him was a group of powerful human soldiers. The person in the lead was Murong Yu's second disciple, Gu Kai. He was now also a powerhouse on the Saint rankings. He was the captain of Murong Yu's guards and was directly responsible to Murong Yu. At this moment, he was leading the guards and logistics team to clean up the battlefield. Helpless, many saints began to hand over their storage space and treasures that had recognized them as their masters. Although they were unwilling, there was nothing they could do. No one wanted to hand over their treasures. However, Gu Kai and the others directly checked their bodies and even their memories. Once they found that they were hiding something, they would kill them. In the beginning, some Demon Clan saints thought that they could get lucky, so they hid some of their most precious treasures and did not hand them over. However, they were soon discovered by Gu Kai and the others. In addition to Gu Kai, the powerhouses on the Saint rankings who suppressed the entire Broken Mountain City also cooperated with Gu Kai and the others to check their bodies. Therefore, no one could get lucky. After dealing with a few people who stood out and made a show of force, the people who came later did not dare to hide anything. In less than half a day, the hundreds of millions of Demon Clan powerhouses in Broken Mountain City were plundered. In fact, other than the treasures on them, all the treasures in Broken Mountain City were plundered. The human army's ability to plunder treasures was terrifying. No matter how well hidden the Demon Clan saints were, they could not avoid the fate of being plundered. In the end, other than the worthless items, everything of value in the entire Broken Mountain City was plundered by the human army. In fact, if Murong did not come, the human army might not be able to plunder so thoroughly. However, it was different now. Under Murong Yu's divine sense, the Demon Clan saints' treasures could not hide. This was especially true when Murong Yu enveloped it with the origin energy of the saint's world. Everything appeared before him with incomparable clarity. After plundering the treasures, the demon clan Saint Rankings to attack. He directly sealed the power of all the demon clan experts, sealing them at the level of saint and great saint. Murong uses and became to Murong Yu's work. At this point, the human army gained a few more Saint Rankings experts. If the human army gained a few more Saint Rankings experts every time they conquered a city, Murong Yu's Saint Ranking slaves would definitely reach a terrifying number once they conquered all the demon clan. After driving all the demon clan's experts to a corner of Broken Mountain City and sending a few human experts to stand guard, Murong Yu began to build a teleportation formation. Those people's powers were sealed, so nothing would happen even if a prime saint stood guard. Building a teleportation formation was a piece of cake for the current Murong Yu. In less than half a day, Murong Yu had built hundreds of large-scale teleportation formations, connecting them to the 108 divisions of the Human Clan Alliance. Thus, the Human Clan Alliance's army continuously came through the teleportation formations. In one night, tens of billions of powerhouses entered the demon race's Broken Mountain City. Broken Mountain City became the first stop for the human army to conquer the demon clan. The tens of billions of soldiers were divided into countless small teams, medium teams, and large teams. However, these large teams were all under the jurisdiction of the previous large teams. The next day, the 100 large teams of the Human Clan Army, each leading billions of human experts, set off from Broken Mountain City, rushing in all directions like a surging tide. The 100 large teams, each in charge of one direction, pushed forward and quickly conquered the various large cities of the Demon Clan. They were invincible in the past, advancing like a hot knife through butter. The Human Clan Army was simply too powerful, and they moved quickly. Every time they occupied a city, just like Broken Mountain City, they would plunder all the treasures in the city and seal all the Demon Clan's experts. However, they did not kill the innocent. Only a few stubborn Demon Clan experts were killed as an example to others. At this speed, the Demon Clan only found out about a month later when the Human Clan Army had conquered 1/10 of the Demon Clan's territory. At this time, the places that were conquered by the Human Clan Army had already become the Human Clan's territory. Other than leaving behind a portion of the Human Clan Army to stand guard, many ordinary humans appeared in these cities and began to run these cities as their own homes. Even though they knew that the Human Clan had invaded, even though the Demon Clan was a unified race, by the time they reacted, the Human Clan Army had already conquered 1/5 of their territory. Countless experts on the Saint Rankings were controlled by Murong Yu, and countless Demon Clan saints became prisoners of the Human Clan. At this time, with the efforts of the experts on the Saint Rankings controlled by Murong Yu, the Human Clan Alliance had more than 30,000 experts on the Saint Rankings, and this team was rapidly growing like a rolling snowball. Other than that, more and more rogue cultivators and experts from other factions joined the Human Clan Alliance, becoming a part of the Human Clan Alliance, constantly strengthening the Human Clan Alliance's team. This included many experts on the Saint Rankings. In the beginning, other than the experts on the Saint Rankings who had already submitted to the Human Clan Alliance, the experts on the Saint Rankings and the Chaos Layer did not join the Human Clan Alliance, even though they had descended to the lower realm. This was because they did not care. As a result, there were not many experts on the Saint Rankings in the Human Clan Alliance apart from Shenzhen. However, after witnessing the strength of the Human Clan Alliance, the experts on the Saint Rankings finally realized something and began to join the Human Clan Alliance. In the beginning, some of the experts on the Saint Rankings naturally did not want to join the Human Clan Alliance sincerely. They wanted to join the Human Clan Alliance first like the Extreme Emperor Palace, and then control the Human Clan Alliance. However, there was no need for Murong Yu to do anything. When Xiang Yang unleashed his terrifying strength, the experts on the Saint Rankings became obedient. Xiang Yang's strength was comparable to the experts who ranked second and first on the Saint Rankings. How many people in the Saint's world were his match? However, although there were more and more human clan experts, they did not advance any faster. This was because the demon clan had already reacted. Groups of demon clan armies marched to the front lines and faced off against the human clan alliance. However, Murong Yu was determined to unify the Saints' world this time. As a result, when the demon clan army arrived, he executed a decapitation operation, with Xiangyang taking action. He killed their leader and a portion of their experts on the Saint rankings. When the news of their leader and experts on the Saint rankings being killed spread among the human clan and demon clan armies, the demon clan's morale was low. All of them were in fear and trepidation, unable to continue the war. On the other hand, the human clan's morale continued to soar as they advanced bravely. Wherever the army passed, they were invincible. No matter how many experts on the Saint rankings came from the demon clan, they were no match for Murong Yu and Xiangyang. In the end, the demon clan experts on the Saint rankings did not even dare to appear. That was because the people who had come were either killed or under Murong Yu's control. Even those who were lucky enough to escape were severely injured. In half a year, more than half of the demon clan's territory had been conquered by the human clan alliance. They had become part of the human clan's territory. At this point, the human clan army was advancing faster and faster. This was because the demon clan had no intention of resisting at all. Even the army that was barely organized was defeated in one blow. There was no way to resist at all. At this rate, it was only a matter of time before the demon clan was conquered. It could not be helped. After all, the demon clan did not have experts on par with Murong Yu and Xiangyang. Now, other than the experts on the Saint rankings, only the second and first experts on the Saint rankings could match up to Murong Yu and Xiangyang. However, these two people had never appeared. No one knew if they were from the demon clan or the Saint clan, or were they simply experts from a human clan. When the news spread, the entire world was shocked. The human clan was naturally cheering, but the Saint clan was shocked. They began to amass troops at the border early in the morning. They all knew that as long as the human clan conquered the demon clan, they would turn their spearhead to deal with them. After all, compared to the demon clan, the Saint clan posed a greater threat to the human clan. The human clan had never given up on killing them. The reason why the human clan attacked the demon clan first was because the demon clan was slightly weaker than the Saint clan. At this moment, at the headquarters of the Saint clan alliance, all the core experts of the Saint clan alliance were gathered here. All the powerful clans in the Saint clan were present. We must save the demon clan, but we must do so at the best opportunity, said an expert from the Saint clan alliance with a sneer. Murong Yu is too strong. If this continues, I'm afraid he'll grow too powerful. He'll threaten our Saint clan in the future, said an expert on the Saint rankings. Just based on Murong Yu? Our Saint clan is not the demon clan. If they force us into a corner, we'll directly kill Murong Yu. However, it's good that Murong Yu destroyed the demon clan. That way, the resistance to our Saint clan unifying the holy world will be reduced. Therefore, I suggest that our Saint clan send troops to save the remnants of the demon clan at the last moment. While saving them, we'll also control them and use them for our own purposes. At that time, the demon clan will have all their elites left. They'll be a powerful force. Chapter 1763. The demons were defeated. The human army was simply unstoppable. That was because war was actually a matter of high-level experts. For example, although the demons had many experts on the Saint rankings, there were not many in the top 10 of the Saint rankings. There were none in the top 3 of the Saint rankings. Of course, that was under the circumstance that the first and second on the Saint rankings had yet to appear. Excluding those two, the top 10 experts of the demon race were few and far between. Even if they were strong, they were not as terrifying as Murong Yu and Xiangyang. After all, these two ruthless people were comparable to the first and second on the Saint rankings. In terms of one-on-one combat, who was their match? In fact, not many people could defeat Murong Yu and Xiangyang even in a group fight. Xiangyang was a primordial, ferocious beast. His strength was so terrifying that it made one's hair stand on end. Back then, all the experts on the saint rankings from the 6 great sacred lands were almost killed by him with one slap, even after using many supreme weapons. One could imagine how terrifying his strength was. However, Xiangyang was so powerful that you could easily suppress him. Therefore, Yu's strength was even more terrifying. During the war, Yu did not need to do anything at all. Xiangyang was the vanguard and rampaged through the demon race's territory. Later on, Xiangyang even formed a commando team made up of experts on the saint rankings and shuttled back and forth in the demon race's territory. Everywhere they passed, chaos ensued. The commando team's only mission was to rob and kill experts on the saint rankings. Every time they arrived at a place, they would directly control that place with the terrifying strength of the commando team. Then, they would forcefully snatch all their resources. If they encountered any resistance, they would kill without mercy. Of course, this was targeted at ordinary saints. If they wanted someone on the demon saint rankings, they would rush up and beat them up without a second thought. Those who surrendered would not be killed. Otherwise, they would be killed without mercy. In the places where the commando team roamed, all the experts on the saint rankings retreated because no one was a match for the commando team. However, the commando team appeared and disappeared mysteriously. Wherever he passed, experts on the demon race's saint ranking fell. Of course, there were also experts on the saint rankings who surrendered. These people were all controlled. Later on, the members of the commando team almost doubled. They were getting stronger and stronger. The demon race was getting more and more terrifying. 2 years. In just 2 years, the demon clan was forced to hide in their last territory, which was less than 1% of their usual size. At this moment, there weren't many experts on the demon race's saint rankings left. Some fled, and some didn't even dare to show up. Most of them were killed or surrendered by the human race. Mount Tianyao, the location of the Celestial Palace. The Celestial Palace was the largest sect of the Demon Clan and controlled almost the entire Demon Clan. Almost all the demonic clan experts, regardless of their race, had to obey the orders of the Celestial Palace. At this moment, there were dozens of experts on the saint rankings sitting in the Celestial Palace, frowning. All of them were ranked on the saint rankings. He was the last expert on the saint ranking in Celestial Palace. However, these people were not in a good mood right now. Their faces were gloomy. This was because the Demon Clan was on the brink of extinction. The human army was rushing over in a formidable manner. With the current strength of the Celestial Palace, there was no way they could stop the human army, which had more than 40,000 experts on the saint ranking. Once the human army passed, the Celestial Palace would be crushed into powder. Why don't we ask the Sacred Tribe for help? One of the experts on the saint ranking suddenly said with some reluctance. Hearing this, everyone's eyes suddenly lit up, but their eyes quickly dimmed. It wasn't that they hadn't thought of asking the sacred race for help. However, the Sacred Tribe was not easy to deal with. The reason the humans attacked the Demon Clan this time was entirely because they had cooperated with the Sacred Tribe to attack the humans. If not for that, why would the humans attack the Demon Clan? Start a war? At that time, the Demon Clan and the Sacred Tribe had already formed an alliance. When one side was in trouble, all sides would help. However, seeing that the Demon Clan was on the brink of extinction, did the Sacred Tribe have any plans to send troops? No. Many monster race experts on the saint rankings understood that the sacred race had been waiting for this opportunity. They were waiting for the Demon Clan to take the initiative to ask for help. When that time came, the Sacred Tribe could naturally take over the Demon Clan. After that, the Demon Clan's army would directly seize the Demon Clan's territory from the human army. Then, they would destroy the human race and unify the sacred world. Unifying the sacred world, whether it was the Sacred Tribe, the human race, or the Demon Clan, they all had this idea. In other words, the Sacred Tribe, the Demon Clan, and the human race would always be enemies. Forming an alliance was just to destroy one of the 3 parties first, and then kill them all. We can't ask the sacred tribe for help. Otherwise, our demon clan will really be wiped out. An expert on the saint ranking immediately said in a deep voice, resolutely refusing to ask the sacred tribe for help. Now, other than the sacred tribe, who else can save us? If we ask the sacred tribe for help, we might still have a chance of survival. But if we don't ask for help, we will definitely die. Another expert on the saint ranking roared, his eyes about to spit fire. No. In an instant, the celestial palace was in an argument. Everyone had their own opinions and were divided into two sides. One side didn't agree to ask the sacred tribe for help, while the other side suggested asking Shenzhen for help. Moreover, both sides were about the same number of people, so they couldn't come to a decision immediately. All right, stop arguing. If we ask for help, we will die. If we don't ask for help, we will also die. I have a way to save our demon clan. The celestial palace lord, who had been sitting in the main seat without saying a word, suddenly said in a deep voice. As soon as he said that, the hall immediately fell silent. Then, everyone's eyes focused on the celestial palace lord. Even an impatient expert on the saint ranking couldn't help but ask, "Palace lord, what is it?" Everyone's face was filled with curiosity. They all wanted to know the answer. The celestial palace lord pointed his finger at the sky and didn't say anything. Seeing his reaction, many experts on the saint ranking who hadn't reacted yet couldn't help but feel a little depressed. They didn't know what the celestial palace lord was thinking. Suddenly, an expert on the saint ranking seemed to have realized something. His face was filled with shock. "Palace lord, are you talking about the demon clan's supremacy?" As soon as he said that, everyone turned pale with fright and looked at each other in horror. Although it was an era where supremacies didn't appear, they all knew that supremacies of the demon clan still existed. But for some reason, supremacies couldn't appear in the holy world, nor could they participate in the battles between the forces of the holy world. Otherwise, there would be a great disaster. Therefore, even if the demon clan was about to be wiped out, they never thought of asking for help from a supremacy expert. They knew that supremacies didn't appear easily. Even if they asked, they might not be able to help. But now that the celestial palace lord had taken the initiative to mention it, every one of them turned pale with fright. "Palace lord, will this work?" An expert on the saint ranking asked excitedly. If the demon clan's supremacy really did take action, they wouldn't be able to repel the human clan's army. It was even possible that they could destroy the human clan and the sacred tribe and unify the holy world. The celestial palace lord nodded solemnly. Whether or not it worked, they had to give it a try. Otherwise, the demon clan would definitely be wiped out. A day later, the celestial palace lord gathered more than 100 experts on the saint ranking of the demon clan. In the celestial palace great hall, everyone knelt together and began to use a special method to summon their demon clan supremacy. The demon clan wasn't the only one who had this method of summoning supremacies. The sacred tribe and the human clan also had this method of summoning. The only difference was that the method was different, but the effect was the same. Our supreme azure wolf supremacy, please accept the most sincere summons of your descendants. The demon clan prayed in unison, summoning one of the two supremacies of the demon clan, the azure wolf supremacy. As for why the azure wolf supremacy and not the other supremacy, this was closely related to the nature of a supremacy. The azure wolf supremacy was vicious, bloodthirsty, and especially hated the human clan. Therefore, summoning him was the most appropriate choice. When the demon clan summoned the azure wolf supremacy on the extraterritorial continent, an incomparably huge azure wolf was crawling on top of a towering mountain, devouring the essence of the primal chaos. Suddenly, one of the azure wolf supremacy's tightly shut eyes was startled. Two rays of light shot out from his eyes. With a boom, the incomparably sturdy mountain in front of him, condensed from the primal chaos force, was smashed into smithereens by the two rays of light. Despicable things! How dare you wake me up? I really shouldn't have given them the ability to summon me back then. A trace of anger flashed through the azure wolf supremacy's eyes. Just a moment ago, he actually felt the summons of the demon clan's saints from the saints' world. To the Azure Wolf supremacy, the demon clan of the saints' world wasn't important. The most important thing was himself. What he lacked the most now was time. Without enough time to cultivate, he didn't dare to break through the cycle of reincarnation. And if he couldn't break through the cycle of reincarnation, he might die along with the fall of the saints' world. At the same time that he was displeased, the Azure Wolf supremacy was also furious. This was because he already knew the situation in the saints' world. Damned humans, how dare they destroy my demon clan? They really deserve to die. The Azure Wolf supremacy cursed angrily. Then, his huge figure that stretched across the horizon rapidly shrank. When he shrank to the size of a normal wolf, he let out a howl towards the sky. Then he stomped his feet and smashed through the void in the next moment. He plunged into the depths of the void and disappeared. When he reappeared, the Azure Wolf supremacy was already in an incomparably huge sea of blood outside the realm. Here, waves of blood surged into the sky. An incomparably dense smell of blood constantly wafted out. It was extremely pungent. Damned Shui Tao supremacy. Lord Wolf hates coming to this godforsaken place the most. The Azure Wolf supremacy took a step out of the void. He first glanced at the endless sea of blood, then said in a displeased manner, "Pervert, no one told you to come here. What are you doing here?" An indifferent voice rang out from the endless sea of blood. Then the blood in the sea of blood churned violently. In the end, it slowly formed a blood-colored giant. This person was one of the two supremacies of the demon clan, Shui Tao supremacy. Azure Wolf supremacy. Shui Tao supremacy. Chapter 1764. Old Man Shui Tao. Can't you find a normal place? Isn't it disgusting for you to stay in this disgusting place all the time? Sovereign Song Lang sneered at Sovereign Shui Tao in displeasure. Sovereign Shui Tao smiled faintly. Pervert, I already said that no one asked you to come here. If there's nothing else, then go away. Sovereign Shui Tao waved his hand impatiently and chased Sovereign Song Lang away. Sovereign Song Lang said shamelessly, "This place isn't yours. I can stay here as long as I want." Before Sovereign Shui Tao could speak, Sovereign Song Lang continued, "Old Man Shui Tao, I really do have something to do today. Do you still remember the demons of the holy world?" Sovereign Shui Tao glared at Sovereign Song Lang. "Isn't that nonsense? Aren't we all from the demons of the holy world?" "That's right. Let me tell you, the demons of the holy world are about to be wiped out by the humans. They've already asked me for help. Do you think we should attack or not?" As he spoke, Sovereign Song Lang condensed an incomparably huge throne in the air. Then he jumped onto it and half-squatted on it, closing his eyes to rest. It was as if the demons of the holy world had nothing to do with him. The demons are about to be wiped out? Sovereign Shui Tao immediately flew into a rage. The humans actually dare to wipe out the demons? How is that possible? How can the humans possibly wipe out the demons with their strength? Could it be that the humans and the holy race have joined forces? No way. Whoever dares to wipe out the demons, I'll wipe them out 100 times. Murderous intent surged, and killing intent surged. Once the demons were wiped out, they would have no more descendants. In the future, no one would be able to become a sovereign. As for sovereigns like them, every death meant one less. If all of them died, then the demons would truly be wiped out. In the outer realms, even titled sovereigns had the possibility of dying. Since ancient times, many titled supreme martial artists had perished. Wipe them out 100 times? How are you going to do that? Do you dare to return to the holy world? If you do, you can indeed kill the humans and the holy race with a slap, and then the demons will unify the holy world. At this moment, Ash Wolf Supremacy opened his eyes with a look of disdain on his face. Shui Tao was taken aback. Then, a wry smile appeared on his face. With their strength, returning to the Saints' world was a trivial matter. As long as they wanted to, they could return to the Saints' world immediately. But did they dare to go back? He didn't dare. If they were discovered by the sovereign, he'd probably slap them to death with a single slap. Although they were titled supremes, they couldn't withstand a single slap from a sovereign. Pervert, you're usually so cunning. You must have a plan. Tell me, our demon race absolutely cannot be exterminated by the human race. Shuetao's sovereign glanced at Songlang's sovereign and said indifferently, based on his understanding of autarch Ash Wolf, with how treacherous this fellow was, he must have already thought of a plan long ago. The Saints' World, Heavenly Monster Mountain. The human army had already surrounded the Heavenly Monster Mountain. Right now, the morale of the human army was high, and they were extremely excited. They knew that as long as Mount Tianyao was destroyed, the Yao clan would be exterminated. This was the first time in the history of the three races in the Saints' World that someone had destroyed another race. They were the heroes of the human race. In the future, their names would be passed down through the ages. Just thinking about it made them extremely excited. As commanders, Li Ling, Xiangyang, and the others were also very excited. However, the Celestial Palace was filled with dark clouds. All the demon race powerhouses were extremely nervous. Some of them were even thinking about whether they should die bravely or surrender on the spot after Mount Tianyao was breached. It was said that the surrendered demons had their powers sealed and all their resources taken away. However, their lives weren't in danger. In the Celestial Palace, more than 100 powerhouses on the Saint rankings looked even more gloomy. They were even more nervous. Palace Master, can Autarch Ash Wolf hear our summons? More than half a day has passed. Should we summon him a second time? One of the powerhouses on the Saint rankings couldn't stand the oppressive atmosphere and asked. The Celestial Palace Master was also a little nervous, but he still shook his head. Autarch Ash Wolf must have already sensed our summons. However, it will take time for him to react and return to the Saints' World. We have to wait patiently. We can wait, but I'm afraid the humans can't. Once they break through Mount Tianyao and kill us, what's the use of Autarch Ash Wolf? When that happens, what's the use of Autarch Ash Wolf? One of the powerhouses on the Saint rankings said with some resentment. Hearing that, many of the powerhouses on the Saint rankings nodded in agreement. Why are you panicking? Wait patiently. The Sky Demon Palace's palace master growled impatiently. Thus, the hall fell into an oppressive atmosphere once again. Rumble, the humans had begun their attack. Waves of power fell from the sky like raging waves. They poured down in torrents and bombarded the protective formation of Mount Tianyao rapidly. The protective formation emitted waves of blinding holy light and unpleasant creaking sounds from the impact. Currently, the protective formation of Mount Tianyao could still withstand the humans' attacks. However, every time it withstood a round of attacks from the humans, the protective formation's power would be depleted a little. At this rate, the protective formation of Mount Tianyao wouldn't be able to hold on for more than a few days. And this was under the circumstance that many of the human powerhouses had yet to make a move. For example, Xiangyang and Li Ling had yet to make a move. If they all made a move, it was still a question whether the protective formation of Mount Tianyao would be able to hold on for a day. Yes, it's time for the demons to perish. Xiangyang stepped forward from the back of the human army. Then, he punched out fiercely and went straight for the protective formation of Mount Tianyao. Boom! Creak! The protective formation of Mount Tianyao suddenly exploded with a blinding holy light. Following that, the formation emitted a sound that sounded like it was about to shatter. Then, the protective mountain array quickly dimmed. It seemed like it would shatter at any moment. Xiangyang's strength was evident. At the sight of this, the humans naturally cheered out loud. On the other hand, the demons on Mount Tianyao were so frightened that their faces turned pale. It was too terrifying. Even the powerhouses on the Saint rankings in Celestial Palace were so frightened that their hearts skipped a beat. Bastard, this Xiangyang is too strong. Our mountain-protecting Grand Formation can only withstand 3 more attacks from him at most. After 3 times, the protective formation will be destroyed. A demon on the Saint rankings roared angrily. He looked like he wanted nothing more than to kill Xiangyang with one punch. Boom. However, before he could finish his sentence, Xiangyang had already punched the protective formation of Mount Tianyao again. A terrifying power erupted, immediately causing fine cracks to appear on the formation like a spiderweb. Palace Lord, we have to be prepared to retreat. We can't rely on Lone Wolf Sovereign anymore. A powerhouse on the Saint rankings became anxious. Now was the best time to escape. Otherwise, if Xiangyang punched a few more times and destroyed the protective formation, they would not even have the chance to escape. Boom! Xiangyang's third punch landed on the formation again. This time, the Heavenly Demon Mountain's grand protective array was covered in even more shocking cracks. The entire formation was so dim that there was almost no light at all. Let's go! The Celestial Palace Lord decisively gave up on the power to escape. If they did not leave now, they would all be in for a tragedy. However, Xiangyang's fourth attack landed on them just as they were about to escape. Boom, boom, boom. A series of shattering sounds spread far and wide. Many demons on Mount Tianyao immediately revealed a look of despair as they looked at the formation that had been shattered into billions of pieces by Xiangyang's punch. It's over. At that moment, even the powerhouses on the Saint rankings had the same thought. At that moment, they felt as though the sky had collapsed and all their hopes had been dashed. Some of them had even collapsed. Their last trump card had been destroyed. What else could they use to resist the powerful humans? All of them were either killed or captured by the humans. The demon clan would also disappear from the history of the Saints' world after today. They would only be slaves to the humans and would never be able to rise again. Surrender, and we won't kill. We won't kill those who surrender. The human army roared excitedly and charged forward from all directions. They were about to occupy the last territory of the demon clan. The demon clan was about to be completely wiped out. Even the palace master of Celestial Palace was in despair. However, at that moment, an aura that was more than 10 times more terrifying than Xiangyang's aura rapidly spread from the sky. It instantly suppressed most of the region, including Mount Tianyao. Plop! The aura became more and more terrifying as it approached. In the end, other than the powerhouses on the Saint rankings, all the powerhouses from both the demon clan and the human clan were suppressed to the point that they could only prostrate on the ground. They could not move at all. They could not even breathe. In the end, even the powerhouses on the Saint rankings could not stand. They were all suppressed to the point that they could not move at all. In the end, only Xiangyang was left standing on the ground with gritted teeth. At that moment, even he could not stand in the void. Who is this? Could it be a paragon? Everyone was extremely shocked, apart from the 100-odd powerhouses on the Saint rankings from the demon clan. Although these people were also suppressed to the point that they were prostrating on the ground, their eyes flickered with ecstasy. Lone Wolf Paragon had heard their summons and came down. Or perhaps he had sent someone down. This person was at least a Paragon-level powerhouse. Even if he was just an ordinary Paragon, he could unify the entire holy world and become the overlord of the holy world in this era where Paragons did not appear. The demon clan would not be wiped out. The demon clan could even unify the holy world and become the overlord of the holy world. The human clan and the sacred clan could only become the slaves of the demon clan. A paragon had indeed come down. It was not Lone Wolf Paragon or Shui Tao Paragon, but an ordinary paragon from the demon clan. At that moment, this paragon had already landed on Mount Tianyao. Looking at the prostrating demon clan and the human clan, the paragon revealed a satisfied smile. However, the smile on his face soon froze. This was because he saw Xiangyang, who was still stubbornly standing on the ground. Chapter 1765. In front of a prime, saints below the prime level, including the number 1 expert on the saint rankings, were like ants. In the eyes of many prime-level experts, those ants were not qualified to stand with them. Ants should have the awareness of ants. They could not stand with a prime-level expert. Therefore, when he saw Xiangyang standing there like a sacred mountain, the prime-level expert of the demon clan was immediately enraged. He was enraged that an ant like Xiangyang was actually standing with him. Humph! Therefore, the prime-level expert of the demon clan snorted and pointed his finger at Xiangyang. At that moment, Xiangyang's heart was instantly enveloped by an intense aura of death. In an instant, Xiangyang's expression changed. This was because he knew that the prime-level expert of the demon clan's finger could definitely take his life. Therefore, without another word, he raised his strength to the maximum and was about to retreat. However, the prime-level expert of the demon clan was simply too powerful. The terrifying aura suppressed Xiangyang like a storm, making him unable to move. In fact, Xiangyang was already barely standing on the spot. Even a gust of wind could blow him down. What more an attack from a prime-level expert? Therefore, he wanted to retreat, but could not move. For a moment, he was extremely anxious. Roar! However, Xiangyang soon reacted. After an earth-shattering roar, Xiangyang transformed into a gigantic, primordial, ominous elephant that exuded a ferocious aura. Xiangyang transformed into his true form. In his true form, Xiangyang's strength had increased tremendously. He stomped on the ground, shattering a large part of the ground. As for him, he had already borrowed the force of the collision to retreat backwards. However, the prime-level expert of the demon clan showed Xiangyang what a prime-level expert was, what a prime-level expert's strength was. Poof! Before Xiangyang could move, the prime-level expert of the demon clan's finger had already pointed at Xiangyang's body. Therefore, Xiangyang's body was like a piece of tofu that was directly crushed into powder and disappeared without a trace. The power of a single finger. It should be known that Xiangyang's strength was comparable to the #1 expert on the saint rankings. However, he could not withstand the power of a single finger from the prime-level expert of the demon clan. One could only imagine how big the gap was between the strength of a supreme being and an expert on the saint rankings. As the saying went, anyone below the supreme being level, even a #1 expert on the saint rankings, was nothing but an ant in the eyes of a supreme being. Even if there was a difference, it would only be the difference between an ordinary ant and a larger ant. However, his nature remained the same. He was still an ant. At this moment, the sovereign of the demon race suddenly exclaimed in surprise. This was because he had discovered that even though he had shattered Xiangyang's physical body with a single finger, Xiangyang's soul had actually escaped and was fleeing into the distance. This infuriated the sovereign of the demon race. He had never thought that he wouldn't even be able to kill an ant. Wasn't this the same as slapping his own face? Thus, he attacked again. However, at this moment, a dangerous aura suddenly rose in his heart. There is actually something in the saint's world that could make him feel danger? Could there be other supremes in the saint's world? The sovereign of the fiend race was shocked. He didn't have time to think before he started to defend himself carefully. He didn't even continue to pursue Xiangyang. Boom! At this moment, the sovereign of the demon race's soul seemed to have been ruthlessly slashed by someone. The intense pain almost caused him to faint. In fact, his soul had even cracked into tiny cracks that were almost invisible to the naked eye. His soul was injured. Soul attack. Soul saint. The sovereign of the demon race was shocked. If he encountered such a supreme being who specialized in cultivating the soul, he would definitely die. He was no match for him at all. Thus, he didn't say anything and immediately retreated. However, just as he retreated, Xiangyang's soul, too. All the humans disappeared into thin air with a swoosh. They seemed to have been stored in a spatial treasure or taken away by someone in the air. The other party's target wasn't him, but those humans. The other party was from the human race. The sovereign of the demon race came to his senses and was so angry that his face turned red. He took a step forward and reached out his hand. It shattered the sky and grabbed towards the depths of the void. He wanted to grab the person hiding in the depths of the void. Time reversal. At the same time, a cold voice suddenly came from the endless void. At the same time, the power of time had already taken effect on the sovereign of the demon race. Before the sovereign of the demon race could react, he felt the scene in front of him change. It was no longer the scene from before. He had been sent away by the reversal of time. Roar! The sovereign of the demon race roared furiously. A terrifying power erupted and shattered Murong Yu's power of time. However, when he returned to his original space-time, he roared. There were only a few of the demon race experts on the Saint ranking who were crawling behind him. The experts on the Saint ranking who were lying on the ground were the same as before. There were more than 100 of them. However, there were dozens of them who no longer had any signs of life. It was obvious that their souls had been destroyed and killed. And this was only for a moment when the sovereign of the demon race disappeared. This made the sovereign of the demon race extremely angry. Wasn't this tickling a tiger's head? Killing the experts of the demon race in front of him? This was definitely looking down on him and mocking him. This was a slap to his face. The person who saved Xiangyang, Li Ling, and the rest of the human army was Murong Yu. Murong Yu had been guarding Broken Mountain City the entire time and did not follow the army to battle. However, he had placed various communication talismans on Xiangyang, Li Ling, and the rest. Once he discovered that they were in danger, he would rush over immediately. When the sovereign of the demon race appeared, the terrifying power that could destroy the world had already alarmed the entire Saints world. Even the humans and Saints who were far away could feel the power that the sovereign of the demon race could release. In reality, the vastness of the Saints' world was extremely terrifying. However, the aura of a sovereign could not affect the entire Saints' world. The sovereign of the demon race had only achieved this with the help of Sovereign Xue Tao and Sovereign Songlang. His goal was naturally to intimidate others. He had indeed achieved his goal. When the sovereign of the demon race appeared, countless people from the human race and demon race were stunned. Naturally, Murong Yu was also shocked. In the next moment, Murong Yu reacted. He immediately activated the Hichu Luoshu's teleportation ability and appeared near Mount Tianyao, hiding in the endless void. Of course, Murong Yu could not watch Xiangyang, Li Ling, and the rest be killed without doing anything. Therefore, he launched a sneak attack on the sovereign of the demon race. Under the circumstances where the sovereign of the demon race was caught off guard, he managed to save Xiangyang and the rest. Xiangyang was severely injured. However, even if his soul was severely injured, with Murong Yu's current strength, he could easily recover. In the end, Murong Yu even stored all the human army in the demon race's territory into Hichu Luoshu. The other humans also returned to the human race through the teleportation formation. In just one night, the entire demon race's territory was empty. There was not a single human or demon race. After Murong Yu returned to the human race, he even gathered the experts of the Human Race Alliance in Tiangang Mountain. He was prepared for the sovereign of the demon race's attack. With Murong Yu's current strength, he could not even kill a sovereign with a sneak attack. He could not even severely injure a sovereign. To fight a sovereign head-on? That was simply impossible. At that moment, many experts of the Human Race Alliance were in the main hall. They looked at each other with gloomy expressions. The atmosphere was tense. If the demon race can invite a sovereign, we humans have sovereigns too. Sovereign Wushuang and Sovereign True Marshal. An expert on the Saint ranking said in a deep voice. Everyone's eyes lit up. If the demon race could invite a sovereign, so could the human race. Therefore, everyone looked at the experts of the Saint ranking from True Marshal Sacred Hall and Unparalleled Palace, especially Feng Yongji and Lin Guyun. Feng Yongji and Lin Guyun shook their heads at the same time. It's extremely difficult to invite a sovereign. Even if we contact a sovereign, he might not come down. There are many reasons why sovereigns don't appear in the sacred world. The demon race has a sovereign? Why don't we humans have one? Are our sovereigns inferior to the demon race? An expert on the Saint ranking was a little angry and puzzled at the same time. Lin Guyun shook her head. Ordinary people didn't know about sovereigns at all. In the human race, Feng Yongji and Lin Guyun were probably the ones who knew about sovereigns the best. After all, Sovereign True Marshal and Sovereign Wushuang were their seniors. Of course, the human race couldn't possibly only have two sovereigns. However, they were indeed the only titled sovereigns. However, who would be able to contact a normal sovereign. In fact, everyone present thought that the human race only had Sovereign True Marshal and Sovereign Wushuang. However, those secrets couldn't be revealed by the two of them. That way, the entire sacred world would know. However, if they didn't say anything, we can only try. How about this? Lin Guyun, try to contact Sovereign Wushuang. If you can't contact Sovereign Wushuang, Feng Yongji, try contacting Sovereign True Marshal. While everyone was puzzled, Moronyu had already made the final decision. Moronyu was helpless too. It was still fine for Sovereign Wushuang. At least he didn't have any grudges with him. However, it was different for Sovereign True Marshal. He had already devoured the True Marshal's sacred hall. If Sovereign True Marshal returned, he would probably devour him directly. However, if they didn't invite a sovereign, they wouldn't be able to deal with the sovereign of the demon race. Moronyu wanted to kill Sovereign True Marshal, but he didn't have the ability to do so. Lin Guyun nodded her head, then took her leave. She had to make some preparations. She had to use a special method to contact Sovereign Wushuang. The tables had turned. Previously, the demon race was facing the threat of extinction. However, the tables had turned. The human race was facing the threat of extinction. Even the sacred race was facing the threat of extinction. Therefore, the demon race had already reacted. Chapter 1766. Under the threat of the demonic bee sovereign, both the human race and the sacred race were in danger of being exterminated. Simultaneously, both the human race and the sacred race began to contact the sovereign. After all, in the current situation, it was impossible for either the human race or the sacred race to deal with the demon race's supreme being without a supreme being. They didn't know what the sacred race's situation was, but the human race's situation was worrying. Using the special information left behind in the unparalleled palace, Lin Guyun and the others finally managed to contact Sovereign Wushuang. However, the result made all the experts in the human race alliance disappointed. Sovereign Wushuang wouldn't come down to the sacred world, and neither would Sovereign Jinwu. The human race didn't have a sovereign. Whether the human race could continue to exist and not be exterminated depended on the human race in the sacred world. The sovereigns couldn't help. When this news spread, the higher-ups in the human race alliance were disappointed and despaired. Without a sovereign, who could go against the demonic bee sovereign? Muronyu's expression wasn't good either, so he asked Feng Yongji to contact Sovereign Jinwu. Contacting Sovereign Jinwu was much harder than contacting Sovereign Wushuang. Many days later, Feng Yongji and the others finally managed to contact Sovereign Jinwu. However, the result was the same. Sovereign Jinwu said he wouldn't come back. The human race still had to rely on the human race in the sacred world. This infuriated the experts of the Great Alliance of the human race. They were the human race's ancestors, and they didn't even help. This was infuriating. Moronyu was also a little depressed. However, he understood the situation in the sacred world better than others, so he wasn't that angry. On this day, he called Lin Guyun over. Palace Master Lin, did Sovereign Wushuang say anything else? Moronyu looked at Lin Guyun with a gloomy expression. Lin Guyun's expression wasn't too good either. However, she still replied, Sovereign Wushuang only said that there are rules outside the realm, and they can't risk coming back. He also said that the demonic beast sovereign isn't invincible, and he believes that the human race can turn the tide and protect the human race. Hearing Lin Guyun's words, Moronyu almost cursed it out loud. Of course, the demonic beast sovereign wasn't invincible, but that was in front of other supreme martial artists. But now he was in the saint world. In the saint's world, he was invincible. Turn the tide, my ass. Moronyu was infuriated. His impression of supremacy peerless instantly dropped to the bottom. The supremes sent by the demon clan were definitely not the two titled supremes, Grey Wolf supremacy and Shui Tao supremacy. The human race definitely had ordinary supremes as well. Since Supremacy Shui Tao and Supremacy Ash Wolf had a way to bring that supremacy back, Supremacy Peerless and Supremacy true martial definitely had a way as well. But they didn't do that. They were still worried about themselves. They feared that the hegemon would destroy them. However, did they ever consider that once the human race was exterminated, there would be no fresh blood to replenish the supreme martial artist's ranks? If such a thing happened, the human race would eventually be completely annihilated in the long river of history. Since Ji-Zun is unreliable, then I can only rely on myself. Murong Yu's heart was filled with hatred, and his expression also became ruthless. However, it was extremely difficult for him to increase his strength now. Although his strength was higher than Xiangyang's, it was far from the supremacy of the demon clan. Moreover, he didn't have anything that contained terrifying power for him to refine. With his current pursuit of power, even if he wanted to refine a supreme weapon, he would probably need over 100 of them to increase his cultivation by a small level. Where could he find 100 supreme weapons? Perhaps there weren't even 100 supreme weapons in the entire Saints world. A day later, a piece of news came from the Sacred Clan, but made things worse for Murong Yu. Supremacy experts from the Sacred Clan had also come. Although they were only ordinary Sacred Clan experts, they were supremes after all. Now, among the 3 major clans in the Saints world, only the human race didn't have any supremes. If those 2 supremes were to make a move against the human race, Murong Yu would have no choice but to flee with Glory Sect and his family. After all, he was no match for the 2 supremes. Junior brother, this is bad. Not long after Murong Yu received the news, an extremely anxious voice sounded from afar. Then, a figure appeared in the hall. This person was none other than the 8th disciple of the Infernal Society, Huyan Inghao, who was also Murong Yu's 8th senior brother. At this moment, Huyan Inghao, who had always been carefree, had a look of panic on his face. 8th senior brother, what's going on? Murong Yu's heart skipped a beat. He immediately stood up from his chair and looked at Huyan Inghao solemnly. 4th senior brother. At this point, Huyan Inghao took a deep breath and didn't continue speaking. Murong Yu was so anxious that he rolled his eyes. 4th senior brother's name has disappeared from the saint ranking. After taking a deep breath, Huyan Inghao said what he wanted to say in one breath. Thump. Murong Yu's heart skipped a beat. There were only 2 possibilities for a name to disappear from the saint ranking. The first possibility was that the strength of the expert on the saint ranking had already surpassed the saint ranking. In that case, his name wouldn't be recorded by the saint ranking. Just like those supreme being experts, their names wouldn't appear on the saint ranking. The other possibility, which was also the most likely one, was that the person had died. The 4th disciple of the Infernal Society, Yu Yangjia, was extremely powerful. He had always been ranked 10th on the saint ranking, and no one had been able to shake his position. Not long ago, because of the death of the Infernal Society's master, Yu Yangjia had rushed out alone to the Extraterritorial Society's master. All this time, Murong Yu and the others hadn't received any news from Yu Yangjia. However, as long as Yu Yangjia's name was on the saint ranking, it meant that he was still alive. However, why was he suddenly gone? Could he have died? Immediately, this thought appeared in Murong Yu's mind. Thinking of this, Murong Yu's face darkened. A terrifying killing intent spread out from his body. This was really good news. When it rains, it pours. There was no need to mention how bitter Murong Yu felt in his heart. Perhaps 4th senior brother only broke through and rushed to the top 3. Without a certain realm, one can't see his name. Murong Yu looked at Huyan Inghao and said slowly. But Huyan Inghao shook his head. The saint ranking of the people behind all automatically rose by 1 rank. Right now, 10th place is Feng Sanqiu. 4th senior brother is really not on the saint ranking anymore. A hint of chilling, killing intent flashed across Murong Yu's eyes. I'll go take a look. While talking, he took a step out and disappeared on the spot. When he appeared again, he had already arrived below the saint ranking. Raising his head to look, sure enough, Yu Yangjia, these 3 words, was no longer on the saint ranking. Murong Yu didn't believe that Yu Yangjia died just like that. Perhaps he was seriously injured, causing his strength to decline. Hence, Murong Yu's gaze looked down. Except, Even if Moron you looked 1,000,000 times, he still didn't see Yu Yangjia's name. Now, Moron you came to two terrifying conjectures. One was that Yu Yangjia's strength had broken through and already became an existence of the supreme stage. Hence, his name was no longer on the life ranking. It was just that this possibility wasn't very high. It was probably not even 1%. The other reason was that Yu Yangjia had already died. This possibility was close to 99%. It was practically 100% possibility. Outer realm, could it be that fourth senior brother was killed by those supreme stage experts? Master and fourth senior brother. Moron Yu's eyes flickered with a cold light. Extremely terrifying, killing intent brewed in his heart. You all can rest assured. No matter who killed you, there will come a day when I will make them pay with blood. Moron Yu let out a low roar in his heart. Then he took a step out and left the vicinity of the Saint ranking, returning to Big Dipper Mountain. Do your best to search for objects containing enormous power in the entire sacred world, and even the chaos layer. Anything will do. Moron Yu issued this order. Hence, the human race and the hallowed execution hall's intelligence organizations began to investigate rapidly. Moron Yu wanted to increase his strength to fight against the supreme stage experts of the demon race and the sacred race. Although there wasn't much hope, Moron Yu didn't want to sit around and wait for death. However, during this process, he had already summoned the core upper echelons of the Human Race Alliance and his family back to Big Dipper Mountain. In fact, Moron Yu had even moved many people from the Human Race Alliance into the immemorial world. If it really didn't work out, the human race could only retreat into the immemorial world. Hence, Moron Yu wasn't worried that the human race would really go extinct. However, if the human race fled with their tails between their legs, it would be a huge blow to him and the entire human race. Big brother, you can actually look for the heavenly enchantress. She might have already recovered her strength as a supreme stage expert. Just as Moron Yu was worrying, a tender voice rang out in his ears. At the same time, a little girl in purple appeared in Moron Yu's vision. Little Z. The moment he saw Little Z, Moron Yu was first stunned, then overjoyed. Ever since Little Z and the heavenly enchantress were completely separated, Little Z had been in a deep slumber and hadn't woken up at all. Moron Yu had thought that Little Z would be in a deep slumber for eternity. Hence, how could he not be overjoyed to see Little Z suddenly appear in front of him? However, to look for the heavenly enchantress, Moron Yu hesitated again. He had nothing to do with the little enchantress. Back then, he had almost killed the heavenly enchantress. Moreover, when he left the heavenly demon mystic realm, he had plucked so many dragon phoenix flowers. Would he dare to look for the heavenly enchantress? It was fine if the heavenly enchantress hadn't broken through to the supreme stage. Moron Yu wasn't afraid of her. If the heavenly enchantress had recovered her strength, she would have captured Moron Yu directly. Moreover, the heavenly enchantress had wanted to devour Little Z. If he sent Little Z over now, the heavenly enchantress might go back on her words and devour Little Z's soul directly. Hence, Moron Yu hesitated. Big brother, unless you can break through to the supreme stage, you're definitely no match for the supreme stage experts of the demon race and the Holy Clan. Hence, I suggest you look for the heavenly enchantress. Whether you can or can't, you'll know when you see the heavenly enchantress. Although Little Z still looked young, she seemed to have matured a lot compared to before. As for how Little Z found out about these things, with Little Z's strength, she could easily find out. Moron Yu didn't find it strange at all. Chapter 1767. Outside the heavenly demon mystery land, a man in black suddenly appeared out of thin air, holding the hand of a little girl in purple. The two of them were Moron Yu and Little Purple. Originally, Moron Yu was still hesitating whether to come over or not. However, after being persuaded by Little Purple a few times, he decided to come over. However, the heavenly demon mystery land had been sealed by the heavenly demoness, and no one could enter. Of course, This anyone referred to the sages who were weaker than the heavenly demoness. For those who were stronger than the heavenly demoness, even if the heavenly demoness had sealed the heavenly demon mystery land, it would not be difficult for them to enter. Heavenly demoness, you request to see you. Since they'd already arrived outside the heavenly demon secret realm, you decided to throw caution to the wind and directly yelled. However, you did not get a response from the heavenly demoness even after shouting 3 times. This made you depressed. He did not know if the heavenly demoness was still in seclusion or awake, but she did not care about you at all. Given that the heavenly demoness was the only savior of the human race, you would definitely not leave like this. Thus, he began to shout again. However, the heavenly demoness did not respond for a few days, as if she was no longer in the heavenly demon mystery land. However, you knew that the heavenly demon mystery land was formed by the heavenly demoness supreme weapon. If the heavenly demoness left, the heavenly demon mystery land would definitely not stay there. Therefore, the heavenly demoness was still in the heavenly demon mystery land. Heavenly demoness, if you don't come out, I'll go in. You was a little annoyed. After shouting for so many days, even a deaf person would have heard it. If he did not need the heavenly demoness help, he would have left long ago. You, why are you chirping here? Do you know that you're seriously affecting my sleep? A lazy voice was heard, and then a figure appeared in front of you. The gauze covering her body was faintly discernible. When the heavenly enchantress perfect figure appeared in front of you, even you couldn't help but be startled. However, he was only stunned for a moment. Zhao Jiqing and the others were definitely not inferior to the heavenly enchantress. In fact, they were even superior. Immediately, you smiled and looked at the heavenly demoness. Heavenly demoness, you finally come out? Let's go in and have a chat. Oomph. Did I say I wanted to invite you in? You bastard, you actually dare to come here. Looking at you, the heavenly enchantress gnashed her teeth. When she saw little Z, who was standing beside you, her eyes shone brightly. you took a step to the side and stood in front of Little Purple, warning her, Heavenly demoness, I advise you not to have any ideas about Little Purple. Otherwise, I won't let you off. The heavenly enchantress sneered. Who said I would have any ideas about her? I don't need her soul at all right now. Don't worry about it. However, would you believe his words? Of course not. In fact, he had already secretly increased his strength to the limit, guarding against any sudden attacks from the heavenly enchantress. Noticing yu's behavior, the heavenly enchantress immediately glanced at yu with incomparable disdain, then turned around and entered the heavenly demon's secret realm. yu chuckled and pulled the lad into the room. Little bastard, did I let you in? The heavenly enchantress stopped and rolled her eyes at yu. yu chuckled. I've already come in. Are you going to chase me out? As he spoke, yu pulled little Z into the heavenly demon palace, then sat down at the side, looking very imposing. The heavenly enchantress gritted her teeth when she saw this. If it weren't for the fact that she had to maintain her composure, she would have attacked yu directly. This little bastard, he really thinks this is his home. The heavenly enchantress gritted her teeth and sat down on the main seat, then closed her eyes to rest. yu wasn't in a hurry. He directly took out teacups and tea leaves from the Hichu Luo Shu and brewed tea. In the end, he and little Z enjoyed the tea with relish, as if ignoring the heavenly enchantress. The heavenly enchantress was furious. She slammed her hand on the armrest of the chair and looked at yu with hostility. Little bastard, what do you want? If you want to drink tea, you can go home. I don't have time to talk nonsense with you. yu put down the teacup in his hand unhurriedly and looked at the heavenly enchantress. You know about Jizun appearing in the saint's world, right? Nonsense, with such a big commotion. How could I not know? Then what are you going to do? The heavenly enchantress looked at yu speechlessly, as if she was looking at an idiot. What does them coming to the saint's world have to do with me? It seems to have something to do with you, right? Little bastard, are you here to ask me for help? Beg me. Maybe if I'm in a good mood, I'll take care of those two idiots for you. As she spoke, the heavenly enchantress looked at Murongyu with a teasing expression, her eyes filled with playfulness. Murongyu looked at the heavenly enchantress without any anger. If the two of them knew that one of the 10 great supremes here is a Jizun who hasn't recovered to her peak strength, and also has a Jizun weapon and other treasures with terrifying power, I wonder if they would be tempted. Little brat, do you think those two supremes would be tempted? Murongyu turned to ask Little Z. Little Z, on the other hand, nodded in agreement. You, the heavenly enchantress gritted her teeth and looked at Murongyu, wanting to slap this bastard to death. She was a Jizun, and the heavenly demon's secret realm was a Jizun weapon. In the entire Saints world, only Murongyu and Little Z knew about it. The others, not even the Jizun of the demon race or the holy race, would know about it, especially when she had purposely hidden it. If Murongyu were to leak information about her, she wouldn't be a match for those two supreme beings. The ending would be tragic. What do you want? The heavenly enchantress gritted her teeth, wanting to beat up Murongyu. I don't want anything. Murongyu's face became serious. Heavenly enchantress, you helped me defeat those two supremes and protect my human race. I will naturally repay you in the future. You also know that I have the chaotic celestial body. Although I'm not as strong as you now, my achievements in the future will definitely surpass yours. At that time, your benefits will be multiplied countless times. The heavenly enchantress sneered. If you die prematurely, aren't you just trying to gain something without risking anything? Don't think that I'm so easily fooled. Murongyu shrugged. What you think is your business. Helping you will only bring you benefits and no harm. If you don't help, I won't force you. After all, it's impossible for the demon race and the human race to destroy my human race. However, once I grow, it will be impossible for you to gain benefits from me. The heavenly enchantress fell silent. She was right, and Murongyu was also right. In the end, this was just a gamble. If she won, the benefits she would gain in the future would be unimaginable. However, if he lost the bet, then everything would be meaningless. For a moment, the heavenly enchantress was conflicted. Murongyu and Little Z were drinking tea leisurely, not rushing the heavenly enchantress. After half a day, the heavenly enchantress finally let out a sigh of relief. She seemed to have made a decision. How about it? Do you want to bet or not? Murongyu looked at the heavenly enchantress with a smile, as if he had already guessed the heavenly enchantress' answer. The heavenly enchantress nodded. I'll bet. However, although I've already stepped into the supreme realm again, it's only a few days ago. But that was only a few days ago, so his strength was still unstable. If an accident happens, my realm will fall again, and I'll never be able to become a supreme realm again. Moreover, I'm not a match for those two supreme realm experts. Murongyu's face was a bit ugly. Isn't this a scam? As if she knew what Murongyu was thinking, the heavenly enchantress continued. You don't have to criticize me. I said I'll help you. Although I can't do anything, I can raise the power of one of your battle skills. I can feel that your soul has already reached the peak of the holy world, just a step away from being able to kill a normal supreme realm expert. I can raise your soul to the same level as a supreme realm expert. At that time, it won't be difficult for you to kill a supreme realm expert. Murongyu's heart was moved. His eyes revealed a burning gaze as he looked at the heavenly enchantress. To be honest, this temptation was extremely huge. Asking others to help, you can only ask for a few chances at most. Would the other party help you all the time? But if you have the power to kill a supreme realm expert, then you don't need to ask for help. You can kill whoever you want, and you don't need to care about other people's feelings. Therefore, if the heavenly enchantress could really raise his soul realm, it would be better than the heavenly enchantress directly helping him. However, his soul has already reached the level of 7 stars, and he's cultivating the 9-word mantra. Could the heavenly enchantress really have the ability to raise his soul realm? Heavenly enchantress, what kind of ability is this? It can actually raise my battle skills? Murongyu asked in return. It's not that he didn't believe it. He just wanted to be sure. I can guarantee it. As for what kind of ability it is, you don't need to know. However, once I raise your soul realm, I will be weak for a long time. Don't come looking for me if there's nothing. Also, don't come looking for me if there's anything. Muronyu nodded. If it wasn't because he had no other choice, he wouldn't have come here. Why don't we start now? Let's go to the Hichu Luoshu. Time could be sped up there. Muronyu is already somewhat impatient. The heavenly enchantress rolled her eyes, somewhat speechless. I need to make some preparations. Give me 3 days. After 3 days, we'll start. With that, the heavenly enchantress disappeared from the heavenly enchantress palace. Xiao Zi, can the heavenly enchantress really raise my soul realm? Muronyu was actually somewhat worried. Xiao Zi nodded. The heavenly enchantress does indeed have this ability, but it will consume a lot of her energy, and it's not completely possible. You better be prepared for failure. Chapter 1768. In 3 days, Muronyu and the heavenly enchantress had finished their preparations. During this process, the heavenly enchantress was still all right. Her emotions did not fluctuate much. However, Muronyu was different. He was worried about his gains and losses. In fact, with Muronyu's temperament and cultivation, he did not need to be like this. However, under various circumstances, he had such a reaction. In the heavenly enchantress's palace, Muronyu and the heavenly enchantress sat opposite each other. At this moment, both of their expressions had calmed down. Especially Muronyu. He knew that he needed to calm down now. Therefore, he was already as calm as an ancient well. Heavenly enchantress, let's begin. Muronyu glanced at the heavenly enchantress, then said in a deep voice. The heavenly enchantress nodded. Circulate your soul cultivation technique or battle skill with all your might. Muronyu nodded, then started to circulate the Shi formula of the 9 syllables with all his might. In an instant, Murongyu's incomparably huge and terrifying soul space started to churn violently. Streaks of soul power started to surge from his soul sea, which had a circumference of 1 billion, and started to wreak havoc in the entire soul space like a storm. A trace of the heavenly enchantress soul power also quickly entered Murongyu's soul space. When she saw Murongyu's terrifying soul space, the heavenly enchantress was shocked. She almost could not help but exclaim out loud. Before the incident, she was one of the 10 titled supreme martial artists. Both her strength and knowledge were extremely terrifying. However, she was sure that she had never seen or even heard of such a huge soul space before. However, the heavenly enchantress was also very resilient. She calmed down after being shocked. However, she was a little hesitant now. Previously, she was full of confidence that she could definitely help Muronyu raise the level of his soul realm. However, that was based on the fact that she knew Murongyu's soul realm. However, she wasn't so sure about the current situation. Moreover, Murongyu's soul realm was so terrifying, the heavenly enchantress' consumption would be even greater. Gritting her teeth, the heavenly enchantress still did not say anything. Since she had already promised Muronyu, she would never go back on her words. After observing Murongyu's soul for a long time, the heavenly enchantress began to observe the operation of the Shi character formula. The swordsman formula was one of the 9 syllables mantra, one of the most powerful techniques in the world. In the beginning, the heavenly enchantress was stunned by Muronyu. This cultivation technique was simply too profound, too cryptic and difficult to understand. But it was so powerful. Who the hell is this kid? How could he be so sick? The heavenly demoness thought to herself, feeling a little jealous of Muronyu. Half a day later, the heavenly demoness finally familiarized herself with the circulation route and pattern of the Shi character formula. Of course, this was because Muronyu deliberately let her understand. Moreover, he could only barely understand it. If he wanted to cultivate it, that was simply impossible. Perhaps the heavenly enchantress could follow the circulation route of the Shi character formula, but it would be absolutely useless. I'm going to start, the heavenly demoness suddenly said. Just as Muronyu nodded, An indescribable force entered Murong Yu's body and entered the circulation route of the Shi character formula, mixing with Murong Yu's power. The effect was similar to the power refined by Murong Yu's Chaos Furnace. It could directly improve the power of the Shi character formula. Moreover, the effect was even more powerful than the Chaos Furnace, because the Chaos Furnace could refine everything into the most fundamental power, but could only improve Murong Yu's power, not his soul power. Nor could it improve a certain method. It was a different approach to achieve the same result. At this moment, this was the only word that appeared in Murong Yu's mind. Therefore, Murong Yu was overjoyed. He focused his mind and began to break through the realm of his soul. With the direct improvement of his power, Murong Yu's Shi character formula improved very quickly, reaching the peak of its current level in no time. However, it was still unable to break through to the next level and was still madly devouring the power from the heavenly demoness. Murong Yu knew that once he broke through to the next level, his soul might also break through to the 8-star level. However, the problem now was that his Shi character formula had not reached its limit yet and was still absorbing a large amount of power. At this moment, in the outside world, the heavenly demoness' originally spirited appearance was gone forever. Her face was a little pale, and her forehead was covered in cold sweat. In fact, her aura had become much weaker, and it was still weakening. It was obvious that this was a great drain on her. This bastard still can't break through. The heavenly demoness gritted her teeth and cursed Murong Yu in her mind. If it were any other soul saint, they would have broken through long ago. However, Murong Yu was like a bottomless pit that she could not break through. The worst thing was that she could not stop now. Once she stopped, all her previous efforts would be wasted. If Murong Yu could not break through, then all her efforts would be in vain. She would not be able to achieve her original goal. Therefore, the heavenly demoness could only grit her teeth and endure. Outside the heavenly demon mystic realm, something big had happened. After the original demon sovereign descended to the lower realm, there were not many demon beasts left. Some of the powerhouses on the saint rankings were hiding all over the world, not daring to show themselves. Using this time, the demon sovereign gathered all the powerhouses on the saint rankings. With the sovereign around, these powerhouses on the saint rankings did not need to hide. They walked out one after another. However, other than the few powerhouses on the saint rankings, there were not many other demons. This was because almost all the demons had been taken into the Hichu Luo Shu by Murong Yu when he retreated. In other words, there were only a few 100 million demons left. These were the demons that guarded Mount Tianyao for the longest time. For revenge and to unify the holy world, the demon race army under the sovereign's lead once again attacked the human race. However, what infuriated the demonic race supremacy was that there was no resistance wherever they went, because there was no one at all. After the previous battle, the human race suffered heavy casualties. After learning their lesson, they moved even faster. Li Ling and the others had already arranged for them to be teleported to the Big Dipper headquarters and then to the primordial world. The primordial world was too vast. The entire human race had no place to live after entering. Therefore, the demon race army appeared outside Big Dipper Mountain without any resistance. At the same time, the sacred race also charged over under the lead of their sovereign. They surrounded Big Dipper Mountain, which was also the headquarters of the Human Race Alliance. Both sides wanted to destroy the Human Race Alliance, but they were wary of each other and did not dare to make a move. Therefore, the three sides confronted each other like this. In reality, it could only be considered as two sides. This was because there were not many people left in the Human Race Alliance. Under the protection of the mountain guarding formation, only a few people remained to guard the headquarters. Everyone else had already escaped to the primordial world. This was the decision made by Murong Yu before he left. After all, the human race did not have a sovereign. They were definitely not a match for the demon race and the sacred race. Therefore, there was no need to cause unnecessary casualties. Boom! Suddenly, After an earth-shattering explosion, an incomparably huge hand stretched out from the ninth heaven. It carried a terrifying aura that could destroy heaven and earth as it slammed down on Big Dipper Mountain. Rumble, Big Dipper Mountain, the mountain guarding formation of the Human Race Alliance's headquarters, was completely activated. It erupted with blinding holy light. Puff! The human race experts guarding the Human Race Alliance's headquarters were almost shattered by this sudden explosion. The blood in their bodies surged like rivers and seas as they spat out mouthfuls of blood. The sovereign of the demon race has made his move. Run! These people looked at each other and then quickly flew towards the teleportation formation. Ha ha! You're a mighty sovereign, yet you can't even break through an ordinary protective formation of the saint's world. You really are a disgrace to us. The sovereign demonic beast laughed aloud as he slammed his hand down as well. The sovereign of the sacred race's face was flushed red. He was the one who attacked just now. He wanted to use this opportunity to intimidate the other party. After all, there were only a few sovereign experts in the entire Outer Realm. They were all very familiar with them. He angrily slammed down with his palm after the sovereign of the demon race attacked. Rumble! Before the human race experts guarding the Human Race Alliance could reach the entrance of the teleportation formation, the sovereign of the demon race's attack had already landed. This time, the mountain guarding formation of the Human Race Alliance was still intact. One could imagine how terrifying the mountain guarding formation was. However, the human race experts were in a miserable state. They were almost turned into dust by the shockwave. However, they did not stop and continued to rush towards the teleportation formation. They wanted to teleport to the immemorial world before the teleportation formation was destroyed. Otherwise, they would definitely die. Seeing that the mountain guarding formation of the Human Race Alliance was not destroyed, the sovereign of the demon race was stunned. Then, he heard the sovereign of the sacred race's laughter. It was really the case of the pot calling the kettle black. Whoosh! 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 The human race experts guarding the headquarters of the Human Race Alliance finally rushed into the teleportation formation. The moment they rushed into the teleportation formation, the sovereign of the sacred race's palm slammed down. This time, the mountain guarding formation of the Human Race Alliance was finally unable to withstand their attack. With a boom, it exploded into pieces. Then, the entire Big Dipper Mountain was turned into ashes under the sovereign's power. However, it was soon greeted by two angry roars. This was because the sovereign of the demon race and the sacred race did not find a single human or their corpse in the Human Race Alliance. In fact, there wasn't even anything valuable inside. The entire human race, hundreds of millions of humans, seemed to have disappeared overnight. Where did they all go? It must be Murong Yu. Murong Yu took the entire human race into the Hichu Luo Shu. The sovereign of the sacred race roared with incomparable anger. Although they were powerful, the saint's realm was even bigger. How were they supposed to find Murong Yu, who was hiding? While the two of them were roaring, Murong Yu was about to take the most important step in the heavenly demon secret realm. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.